Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You close the door behind you, and the apartment greets you like an old friend who already knows your name. The sound of the latch is small and final, a soft punctuation that separates the day that was from the evening that arrives without questions. Your jacket hangs where you set it earlier, a familiar curve of fabric draped over the back of a chair, the sleeve still warm where your arm left it. The room takes you in without ceremony. There is a lamp on the low table by the sofa, its shade diffusing a gentle circle of light. It pools against the worn wood and settles on the spines of books that have made this shelf their home. Somewhere on a middle shelf, a photograph leans, half hidden, edges softened by time, a laugh caught in a silence you both remember. Objects in this room know the rhythms of your days. They do not demand explanation. They simply exist, and that is enough. You slide off your shoes. The floor takes them quietly, the soft gave of the rug absorbing the small thud as they find their place. The air carries the faint remnant of the day. Soap dried into your collar, a whisper of cologne that feels like an old habit. The mild damp that clings to the city after light rain. Outside, a distant tire hums on wet asphalt. A late bus sighs somewhere down the street. These sounds are not interruptions. They are the city breathing around the room, a reminder that life continues softly beyond the window. The sofa welcomes your weight with a gentle sigh. The cushions have the familiar contour of evenings spent here, evenings shared, or spent in solitary company, with the same quiet ease. You ease into that shape. The fabric presses in familiar places, the seams tracing a map of comfort you know well. You tuck one ankle beneath you, letting the texture of the throw blanket brush against your skin. The blanket is a slow, generous thing, a present from a friend who knew the exact color that would match your corner light. Its threads carry the quiet memory of that gesture, a warmth that feels almost like a nod. Lamplight softens the edges of the room. Shadows gather like hushes on the walls, long and considerate. The window catches the city in little, distant points. Sodium lamplight, a neon that flickers and then steadies. The silhouette of a building that seems to exhale. Rain beads on the pane in thin trails, making small silver paths that vanish as they go. The scent of the damp city slips through the slightly open window, mixing with the clean linen and the faint stain of espresso from an earlier cup left on the saucer. The combination feels present and domestic, nothing more elaborate than the fact of being here. You notice small things the way you notice people you love without needing to speak. A mug with a chipped rim sits where you put it down earlier. The chip, a conversation you never had to have. A coat hook holds a few. Scarves. One of them with a threadbare patch near the hem. Evidence of a season lived. On the kitchen counter, a little jar contains keys that clink softly when you move. A pleasant, ordinary sound that marks the end of movement and the beginning of rest. These items are not trophies. They are the quiet architecture of a life that includes choices made and kept. There is a softness to the apartment that makes movement small and considerate. You pad bare feet across cool tile toward the sink. Run a hand under water. Watch droplets catch the light before they vanish. The faucet makes a tiny sound, like a single careful note. You do not rush to wash or scrub. Instead, you let the action be slow, a practiced, unhurried kindness to yourself. The towel you dry with is the kind that has been softened by many washings, its threads relaxed and ready for evening use. You settle into the armchair by the window, with a book whose cover you know more by touch than title. There is no need to read the words quickly. Each sentence feels like a companion that does not insist on being answered. The pages breathe a little when you turn them, and the paper has the faint smell of other nights, of laughter echoing off the ceiling, of quiet conversations that were not loud but were important. You let your attention drift across a paragraph, and then to the city beyond the glass, where the lights have a steady, unhurried pulse. Everything moves without pressure. From the hallway comes a soft thump at intervals, the building settling into the night. It is a sound like an agreed-upon rhythm, one neighbor's footsteps blending with the air vents and the distant clatter of a delivery closing its door. The hum of the refrigerator is a companionable underline to the quiet. Even the small noises that might have felt intrusive during the day now feel like rooms in a house, opening just enough to let the evening pass through. You reach for the scarf you left on the back of the chair and wrap it around your shoulders. Not because of cold, but as a shape that holds you. The fabric rests against your neck with an easy weight. You think of the people whose hands once adjusted this same scarf for you, or of the ones who would, if they were here. There is no ache in that thought, only a steady, soft recognition that these connections exist in small acts and small objects. Chosen kin live in these corners, in the mug with the chipped rim, in the blanket draped casually over the arm of the sofa. Their presence is implied rather than announced. On the coffee table sits a playlist you patch together for nights like this. The music plays low, a background texture that does not push into the room so much as fold around it. Notes fall like small raindrops, consonant and gentle. You do not listen to understand. You listen to inhabit the space between one quiet breath and the next. The sound wraps around the lamplight, and for a moment the world narrows to the circle of glow and the soft cadence of the track. You let your gaze rest on the window's reflection. Your silhouette is there, familiar and settled. The muffled city beyond seems respectful of the interior hush. Lights refracted into something softer. The night outside is not unknown. It is simply another side of the same ease. You remember small, ordinary kindnesses from earlier in the day. A message from someone who knows how you like your tea. A small text sending a photograph of an evening meal shared elsewhere. These moments fold into the now without fuss, like hands slipping into pockets at the right time. There is a gentle unfastening to how you move now. Buttons undone with deliberate slowness, tissues smoothed into a pocket. A phone set, face down so the screen is not tempted to insist. You like the rhythm of this slow undoing. The body remembers how to shift gears without drama. Every gesture is modest and careful, as if the night itself prefers that things be handled with quiet respect. Outside the window, the rain thins to a hush. Inside, the apartment breathes in time with you. The lamp keeps its warm circle, forgiving and steady. You rest your head back against the cushion and feel the slight give of the fabric, the outline of the arm of the chair cupping you. In this room, you are allowed to be simply present, an ordinary person in an ordinary place, wrapped in small familiar things. The day recedes not in a hurry, but like a neighbor closing the door, their light dimming as they pass by. The evening that fills the space is gentle, and it is enough. You set things down with a kind of quiet care that has nothing to prove. The simple motions of shedding the day's formality until your hands remember gentler shapes. Your keys make a light, familiar clink as they land in the ceramic dish by the door, a small sound that belongs to this room and to the hour. The coat you wore all evening slips from your shoulders and folds itself over the back of a chair, sleeves relaxed, the fabric softened, at the elbows where it has been touched and leaned upon before. You notice, without needing to decide anything, how much looser everything feels once it is in its place and no longer demanding to be worn. The lamp on the side table is low, the bulb warm enough that it seems to breathe with the air. Light pools on the stack of records you have not yet put away, halos the edges of a couple of books with bent spines, and makes the surface of the small table look like it has always been made to hold the exact arrangement you are leaving there. You set your phone face down, the screen dark and patient, and the sudden quiet that follows feels like a courtesy returned by the room. The window beyond the couch collects the city in soft reflections. A long strip of sodium light, A scattered constellation of apartment windows, a parked car's orange tail. Rain has left the street smelling cool and clean, a dampness that comes in through the slightly open window and rests on the back of your neck like a cool hand. There are traces in the room that suggest other evenings, other hands. A second mug sits in the sink, rinsed but not returned to the shelf, the kind with a chipped rim and a faded logo that no longer stands out. A sweater drapes where someone once slipped it off without fuss, the memory of its weight a warm punctuation against the chair. A postcard tacked to the fridge is pinned by a magnet you came back with from a weekend a while ago, the handwriting on it narrow and quick and wholly private. None of these things require explanation. They simply exist as a small evidence that life has been lived here, that movement has happened and has had meaning. You run your fingers along the edge of a well-worn armchair and feel the upholstery give, the fabric mapping familiar impressions from evenings spent, reading, scrolling, laughing quietly at a show. Long paused, your hand finds the soft outline of a lap blanket folded near the back, an invitation to a particular kind of ease, the kind that requires no plan and no audience. There is a quiet pleasure in folding it just so, smoothing the fabric with the side of your hand until the crease is right in the way you like it, an orderly, gentle action that helps the mind settle. Across the room, a small shelf holds objects that mean little to anyone who does not know their language. A framed photograph leans slightly, the image of a group of people caught mid-laugh beneath a canopy of colored lights. You do not label that laughter or that light. You simply let the image keep its place, letting the warmth of it sit in your chest without needing to turn it into a story. Nearby, a candle tin with a dented lid has the faint memory of cedar and citrus when you tilt it close. The scent braided with the trace of a soap you both happen to favor. Ordinary things carry the softness of familiarity here. The building has the late evening hush of a place that has finished performing for the day. Pipes shift with a small, distant sigh. Someone in the next stairwell moves slowly, shoes whispering on concrete. Far away, a bus breathes and then leaves. These sounds do not intrude. They are part of the city's exhale, a rhythm that lulls rather than startles. Occasionally, somewhere down the block, a laugh travels like a ribbon of light and is immediately folded into the night. The hum is steady and low, a kind of acoustic blanket that reassures without speaking. You take off your shoes by the door and feel the coolness of the floor under your soles, a small grounding sensation. The texture of the rug beneath your feet is familiar, soft loops that have been walked on countless evenings, each thread carrying a memory of a different quiet. You ease onto the couch and notice the way the cushions accept you, the way the room's geometry has been arranged for intimacy without ceremony. A lamp within reach, a coaster on the table, a stack of magazines that lean toward the side you prefer. The apartment breathes with you, adjusting around small, habitual needs. A playlist is paused at a gentle place, the last note still hanging like a sigh. You press play without thinking and let the sound unfold in low tones, music that sits behind everything else like a companion who keeps polite time. The volume stays soft, so the music seems to be in the same space rather than on top of it, and you find that the beat matches the slow tide of your breathing. There is no pressure to act, only the allowance to be present with these ordinary minutes, to feel them lengthen without hurry. You pick up a book that has been part of more than one slow night and let your fingers find the page where you left off. The paper is warm from earlier handling, the words like steady companions. You do not read to fix anything. There is nothing that needs fixing tonight, but to feel the comfort of rhythm and language, the curve of sentences that have been touched by someone who understands how a line can rest. Every now and then you look up and let your gaze find the window, watching city lights breathe in and out as if the whole block were a quiet organism settling into itself. The air carries small, layered scents. Rain on asphalt, the faint whisper of laundry detergent, from a shirt casually draped over the back of a chair. The lingering trace of morning coffee, turned soft by evening. These scents are neither pungent nor demanding. They are gentle markers of a day concluded. You tuck a hand into the fold of the blanket and feel the cotton warmth against your skin. The texture soft and familiar. Fingers trace the seam of the cushion as if reading a map you have followed before, each pass smoothing the night a little more. There is the ease of being allowed to remain where you are, to occupy a space without explanation. The room remembers you, remembers the length of your evenings, the little rituals you practice without ceremony. A small lamp throws a pool of light onto the floor beside you, and the outside world becomes a softened echo. You settle the items that have come with you, the scarf, the bag, the paper ticket from a show, each placed where it will not demand thought tomorrow. In doing this, you practice a quiet generosity toward your future self, an act as simple as making room on the table for the next thing to come. Time here has a different texture, one that is measured not by tasks but by small comforts. You notice the way the room keeps its promises. The chair will be there, the light will be low, the sound will remain a soft background. This is a domestic choreography you know how to follow easily. Set down what you no longer need to hold. Leave space for what might arrive, and let the rest be held by the room itself. There is no rush, only the gradual settling of things that were mobile into a restful order. As you lower yourself further into the couch, the lamplight paints a quiet map on the wall, the shadows of books and plants making familiar silhouettes. Your hands rest, one on the blanket, one on the book. Shoulders relaxed into the shape of home. Outside, the rain finishes another brief conversation with the pavement. Inside, the room keeps watch without claiming anything from you. You are together with these small traces: mugs, coats, a postcard, the faint scent of a friend's soap, and they are, in their way, company. Ordinary, steady, unassuming. You allow that company to be enough, and let the evening do what it always does here, which is to slow, to tuck itself neatly around you, and to stay. You notice the way the apartment breathes after the day has folded itself away. The sounds thin out like a hand, easing off a radio dial. Somewhere beyond the thin glass of the window, a streetlight keeps a patient glow, its pool of amber steady against sheets of wet pavement. The lamp on the side table throws a gentle circle across the arm of the couch, catching the familiar nicks and the slightly lighter patches where your hand has rested over the years. The place feels used in a good way, as though someone had been living here for a long time and left small, kind traces everywhere. The jacket you set down earlier is still where you left it, draped over the back of a chair, with the sleeves folded in a slow, careless curve. The fabric is soft from many evenings, the outline of its shoulders relaxed, as if it, too, has decided not to hold itself up anymore. You let your fingers pass along the lapel when you walk by, feeling the softness, the reassurance that things can be put down without disappearing. The houseplant on the sill leans toward the window, its leaves catching a faint reflection of neon and the darker shapes of building edges. Tiny beads of moisture gather on the glass where the night air meets the warmth inside, and it is simple, quiet company. There is a mug cooling on the coaster by the lamp, a pale ring left where steam once lifted. It smells faintly of something citrus and soap, the way your kitchen often smells after people have come through and been made welcome. You remember the pattern of someone else's footsteps leaving the room earlier. Not loud, not special, just part of how evenings accumulate. That sense of others is steady and uncomplicated, like seeing footprints on a path and knowing you could follow them if you wanted to. Or you could simply sit where you are and watch the moonlight move across the floorboards. The radiator exhales now and then with a soft, aged sigh. It is a sound that fills the small pauses between thoughts, like a punctuation that says nothing urgent. In the hall, the building settles into its night rhythm. The muffled shift of a door, the distant hum of an elevator, the low familiar traffic that never quite goes away. Those sounds are not interruptions, but reminders that life keeps a slow, continuous motion beyond the walls. And here, within the apartment, you can match that pace or choose to slow more. Your sweater feels lighter than it did this morning, the fabric stretched across your shoulders in a way that says the day has released its weight. You move with a kind of deliberate slowness, easing into actions that are small and entirely ordinary. The curtains are drawn, but not tightly. They allow a thin ribbon of city light to rest along the floor, like a pale current. The room is a collage of textures: the worn weave of the couch, the cool smoothness of the coffee table, the faint fleck softness of the throw blanket folded at the end. Each surface suggests a hand has rested there, a conversation once paused and continued later, a quiet domestic choreography that has been practiced and softened over time. There are small artifacts of gatherings, the evidence of chosen company, a stack of postcards from a market you went to with friends, a well-thumbed poetry book with margin notes in 2 different inks, a pair of mismatched mugs you acquired. After a night of moving furniture and laughter, they sit together without ceremony, content in each other's presence. The idea of chosen family is in the way the apartment holds these things, not as trophies, but as ordinary markers of people who stayed, who came, who left kindness in the corners. That familiarity is a gentle kind of belonging. The knowledge that this space remembers more than it needs to. Rain taps softly at the window, not hard enough to demand attention, but enough to add a steady rhythm that threads through the quiet. It is the kind of rain that makes the city smell softer, brings out the warm undernotes of wood and soap in the room, and makes the lamplight seem warmer against the wet night. Each drop is small and patient. They do not hurry you anywhere. They trace slow paths down the glass and gather into little rivers that reflect the streetlights like scattered coins. You move as if in agreement with the evening. Your hands find the familiar items that make the room yours. The book you always pick up at this hour, the small bowl of keys and loose change, the folded scarf that still holds the faint scent of someone else's cologne, layered beneath your own detergent. The scent is not an explanation, it is an accompaniment. It does not intrude. It becomes part of the mosaic of the night, another soft texture to rest against. Your attention slides over the photos on the shelf. They are unassuming, a group on a stoop with arms around each other, a candid from a long afternoon, a paused moment at a small rooftop where someone held a camera just right. The faces are not described, but the light in them is familiar. The way friends let themselves be seen when the world feels accommodating or when they have decided to be brave together. These images are not declarations, they are simply evidence of evenings and meals and arguments and reconciliations that ended with a shared cigarette or a late-night playlist playing on loop. The memories they contain are soft, settled, part of the furniture of this space. You notice the way your shoulders loosen across the minutes. There is no pressure to perform, to explain, to justify. The apartment is a witness that knows you in all your folded, everyday states. It accepts the quiet and the slightly messy, the mismatched socks and the playlist choices you pretend not to care about. There is relief in that quiet acceptance, an unobtrusive ease that does not demand anything in return. As you settle into the couch, the upholstery supports you with a familiar give. The throw slips around your knees with a cool edge where your skin meets fabric, then warms in the hollow of your knees, the way things do when they are meant to be used. Your breathing aligns with the slow cadence of the room, the soft heater, the distant wheels of a late bus, the occasional hush of footsteps on a stairwell. Sounds that earlier in the day might have been sharp or distracting now only feel like background texture, a reminder of life continuing comfortably beyond the walls. Light softens the edges of objects and memories. The lamplight blurs hard lines, and makes the shelf look more like a collection of small altars rather than just places to put things down. You give a little attention to small rituals, the turning of a page, the repositioning of a cushion, the play of your fingers along the edge of a photograph. These actions carry intimacy without spectacle. They are the private language of how you end days. The little moments that tell the room you are here and you are all right. There is calm in the way the city keeps moving without asking for anything from you. You do not need to catch up or justify your pace. The night is generous with its slack. You allow the day to unclench from your muscles, to unlace from around your ribs. The apartment stays steady, a patient host, holding the soft lamplight and the quiet sounds, and the traces of other people who have shared this kind of night with you before. You are part of that quiet history now, a slow presence in a space that remembers and forgives the small slippages of living. Outside, a window glows briefly as someone turns on a light, and then it dims again. Inside, the room keeps its steady temperament, soft and familiar. You remain where you are, allowed to occupy the gentle pause that follows the day. No explanation is required. The world continues its slow work, and here, in this well-worn nook of the city, everything comes down a degree, softens, and is permitted to be as it is. You move through the room like a slow, patient current. Not because anything calls you, but because movement softens the edges of the day. The lamp by the armchair throws a warm circle across the rug, and inside that circle, ordinary things take on a kind of importance. A mug with a faint ring at the bottom where tea sat for too long. A paperback with a dog-eared page. The coat you shrugged off and left draped over the back of a chair. These objects sit as if they remember you, as if memory has settled into their fibers, the same way the day settles into your bones. You notice the sound of the building settling first, a low domestic conversation of pipes and wood. It is familiar in the way that footsteps on a stair become part of the rhythm of a neighborhood. Outside, a distant tram murmurs along its route, softened by night air and the glass of the window. The city keeps its soft hum at a respectful distance. Inside is quieter, a smaller world where your breath meets the room and pauses for no one. You reach for the throw over the arm of the couch and feel the worn knit catch beneath your palm. The yarn is smooth from use, the kind of wear that tells you this blanket has been wrapped around more than one late-night movie. Borrowed between friends on the coldest evenings, tucked under knees during long conversations that shed urgency for warmth. The fabric holds the faint scent of soap and of a person who laughed too loudly once. The memory pressed into the fibers like a quiet photograph. Nothing insists that you examine it. It simply exists as a gentle witness. On the coffee table, a pair of keys rests beside a folded paper map you never opened. The map was a hint of an afternoon walk, pockets of light and shadow you traced and never followed. A small enamel pin, its design uncomplicated and familiar, sits nearby on the map. You know its weight and shape without needing to look closely. It belongs to a night when friends were loud and safe, and the pavement still had warmth from the day. The pin and map together feel like a small, private record of ordinary belonging. Your phone lies face down on the sofa, the screen dark. Earlier, it offered a soft blue glow of conversation that needed no urgency. You remember the rhythm of those messages, the relaxed exchange of plans and small jokes, the kind of language used between chosen family. The messages do not demand to be read now. They are comfortable in their place, like framed notes on a wall. You let them be still, as they are content to be still. Water has condensed on the outside of a glass from the dampness of the evening. You lift it and feel the coolness against your palm, the tiny beads of moisture slipping under your fingers. The sensation is small and precise and familiar, like running your thumb along the rim of a bowl. You use every morning, you drink, and the water tastes clean, carries the hint of the city rain that passed along the window earlier. The taste is a quiet reminder of the evening's weather, of jackets and umbrellas, of streets that smelled like wet pavement and warm takeout, light pools at the base of the bookshelf, where titles rest with their edges softened by years of being handled. A postcard tucked between two spines shows a skyline you visited once. And when you glance at it, you remember a conversation in a cafe you no longer think about with the same intensity. That day was soft-edged, full of small kindnesses, a shared pastry, a joke about the barista's hat, both of you leaning close to hear one another over the rain. The card is not an invitation back to that day. It is a gentle echo, a reminder that these rooms hold chapters. You read and then close. Your jacket lies where you dropped it, the collar folded against the couch arm. A faint smear on the sleeve catches the lamplight. A small trace of color from a paint-splattered flyer you picked up earlier. It is the kind of mark that makes a jacket feel used and known, rather than new and defensive. The fabric remembers your shoulders, the angle of your arms when you laughed. Little things like this stitch the hours into a seam that keeps the room warm. Across the room, a window frames the city with a modest scattering of lights. A neon sign, far off, blinks in a rhythm that does not demand notice. You watch how the window glass softens the view, turning headlights into smudges of gold and making the rain a silver veil. The sound of droplets tapping the sill arrives like a metronome, steady and small. When the breeze slips through the gap at the top, it carries the subtle scent of damp stone and a distant cafe, where someone is closing up for the night. The air brushes your face, and you notice the coolness along your neck, the way the skin there relaxes when you move into the lamp's glow again. A small frame photograph leans against the mantel, its edges worn from being moved, from being glanced at often. The faces are not vivid, they are familiar as a shared joke. There was a night when everyone gathered around a table too small for plates and large enough for laughter, when a song on the radio seemed to belong to all of you. That memory sits in the photo like soft light. It does not push or plead, it shelters. You sit back into the armchair and feel the curve of the cushion conform to your shape. The upholstery is textured under your palms, a surface that resists the city's sharper notes. The chair has a small indentation where a cat once rested its head, and for a moment you think of the quiet warmth of a living weight beside you. You remember how the animal would knead the blanket and close its eyes without obligation, comfortable in a household threaded through with different voices and the same soft rhythm. The memory is not a demand for company now. It is the recollection of easy closeness. There is an order to these objects that feels like an unvoiced conversation. They do not require your attention to exist. The mug can sit half full, the book can wait with its bookmark in a place that is not urgent. Even the light that leans against the wall knows its place and stays there, casting a wash that makes the space feel honest rather than staged. The shadows it makes are soft, not sharp, like the kind you see when your hands move slowly through water. You let your hands rest in your lap and follow the small sounds. The hum of the building, the soft scrape of a chair in the neighbor's apartment, the distant echo of a night bus braking. Each sound is a reminder that life continues at different paces, that the city holds its own nocturnal order. Here, inside your room, there is no timetable. There is only the quiet assurance of objects that remember what happened without replaying it. You do not reach for explanations or resolutions. The evening is a patient companion that allows recollection to surface and then to subside. A ribbon of a memory unfurls, someone's laugh, a late-night pastry, a hand brushing against yours in passing, and then curls back into itself, content to remain a private warmth. The room accepts these fragments, holds them without comment, like a friend who listens without needing to respond. Outside, a window light goes. Inside, a window, out, and then another. The city exhales in small increments. Inside, the lamp keeps its steady presence. Your breath matches its quiet steadiness, a soft rhythm that asks nothing. You feel the texture of the couch, the coolness of the glass, the soft give of the blanket where it meets your knees. Everything presses toward a simpler focus, the comfort of being allowed to be as you are, surrounded by objects that remember and do not demand. The night moves in slow layers, and you remain in the one that cradles you, letting ordinary things hold their gentle weight around you. You come in the door with the weight of the day, eased a little by the last laugh that held longer than it needed to. You set things down without thinking, keys in the small ceramic bowl that has one chipped side and a name scribbled on the inside, a jacket over the back of the chair where it will stay until tomorrow. The phone face down beneath a stack of postcards that look like someone else's vacations but feel like small proofs that the world keeps offering color. Your coat slides against the wood of the chair and makes the faintest sound, a soft exhale that matches the loosen of your shoulders. You pause at the hallway light and decide against turning it on. The living room lamp already throws a warm pool on the rug, and the city beyond the window has settled into a string of distant, obedient lights. You listen to the building around you breathe, the low settling hum, a radiator ticking in time with the slow, forgiving night, a muffled step or two far away that confirms other windows are doing their own small rituals. You notice these sounds not because they demand attention, but because they are familiar and therefore kind. You peel off your shoes and notice the way your feet meet the cool wood. It's a small, private relief to let them touch something steady and honest after a day of surfaces that required a kind of shape. You let your clothes loosen in the order they came: jacket, then maybe a scarf, the sleeves that held the day's gestures. Each movement has a memory of being practiced, like a line of a song you only hum now. You don't plan these motions. They arrive because the body knows how to settle itself, and repetition makes them soft and sure. You make something to drink, not because you are thirsty with urgency, but because boiling water and the ritual of steeping feels like a punctuation mark that belongs to this hour. You place the kettle on the stove and listen to it. Begin the small argument of heat and metal, a gentle insistence that turns into a softer voice as it slows. Steam laces the small kitchen, and a familiar scent comes through. Soap from earlier, a hint of whatever cologne brushed your coat this afternoon. The faint, clean memory of the laundry you left, folded on the counter. The kettle's song is brief and ordinary, and the ordinary is what steadies the edges of the night. You move to the lamp and pull the shade a fraction so the light sits just so, soft enough to hold words and shadows, bright enough to read by if you choose. You slide your favorite mug from the shelf, the glaze warmed by years of use, the rim smoothed by the small rituals of hands. It fits the shape of your palm in a way that feels almost secret, an object that knows you. You breathe in the steam and let the warmth pull tension out along the seams of your shoulders. You settle on the couch that remembers you. The upholstery has softened in the places your body has touched most. It yields in the same way, and you like the predictability of that familiarity. You let a throw blanket fall over your knees even when you are not cold, because the texture of the fabric is an old friend and the weight is an agreeable companion. You reach toward the shelf and take down a volume that has been read more than once. The spine is creased in a slow, friendly way, and the pages have the warmth of repeated attention. You open it, not to chase or to prove anything, but because the act of reading in this light feels like a tidy, comforting motion. You find the small objects that map out a life: a ticket stub folded into a little square, a postcard with handwriting that curves like someone familiar, a Polaroid pinned to a corkboard that catches the lamp's glow and keeps the colors soft. A tiny sticker, the kind you might only notice if you look with a particular gentleness, sits at the edge of a window frame, one quiet emblem of a life lived in the company of certain people and certain nights. You do not dwell on labels or explanations. The objects simply sit in their places and offer the soft assurance of belonging. You listen to the city as it makes itself into background. A distant bus exhales, and a dog's paws tap a sidewalk far away. Rain has left the air damp enough to make the windows cool to the touch. And when you press your palm against the glass, the city light blurs into a watercolor that keeps its edges kind. The smell of wet pavement mingles with the indoors. It is not intrusive, only a reminder of the wider world, moving on its own timeline, indifferent and gentle. You like that the night continues without asking you to participate. You fold the jacket that was slung across the chair and lay it over the back as if to flatten the day into a softer plane. The fabric is familiar under your hands. It carries the faint trace of a cologne you wore, the smell that remains like a memory of company rather than a statement. You place it so the pocket is visible, where a small keychain clinks like a subtle punctuation. Each small action is a quiet inventory, a slow accounting of the places you have been and the ways you came back to this place. You notice how repetition shapes the room. The lamp always sits in the same corner. The throw always folds the same way. The mug always finds your hand. These are not ritual because they demand reverence, but because they hold meaning in their steadiness. The room collects small variations. A postcard moved, a book shifted. But the overall pattern is a kind of home music. You allow your movements to match that tempo, each one soft and unhurried. You look at the shelf where certain records lean, familiar covers that remind you of other nights, other conversations that did not need to be heavy, to be important. They sit with a comfortable, unembarrassed presence, like friends who come to visit, but give you space when you need it. The light on the jackets of those albums is warm and forgiving, and you touch the edge of one as if to remember the way a chord used to settle in your chest. Those touches are quiet acknowledgments of history that include laughter, small communal courage, and evenings where the room was crowded and tender. You sit and let your hands rest on your knees because the motions of the day have done their work and now the stillness has its turn. The apartment keeps a soft echo of activity, the faint hum from a neighbor's late wash, a distant elevator closing with mild ceremony, the whisper of wind passing between buildings. None of it demands response. You listen because you like the company of these small noises, how they make the room feel less like an island and more like a place with walls that hold other lives beside yours. You think of the people who leave traces here. Messages on the fridge, a folded scarf hung on a hook, a recipe scribbled on the back of an old receipt. There is a chosen kind of clutter that communicates belonging without saying the word aloud. You feel the ease of that overlap, a sense that privacy and company can be the same gentle thing. You do not schedule meaning into the night. You let it settle around you the way a lamp settles light across a room. You let the afternoon code itself in evening, and feel the edges of social presence become softer and softer, as if they are rounded by time and familiarity. The gestures, that once felt like performance, now feel like language between things you own and have allowed to keep you. You allow your breathing to adapt to that tempo, even as the sentences of the city dissolve into the softened hum of your home. You stay here, in the ordinary orbit of your own small rituals, where repetition is not monotony but a slow, comforting pulse that says, in its steady way, that you are allowed to remain exactly as you are. You come home sensing the city slow down in stages, like a breath that lengthens as it finds its rhythm. The hallway light spills a narrow strip of warmth across the door, and your key fits the lock with familiar ease. The world you left, crowded bar angles, the polite negotiations of the day, small performances that felt necessary, sets itself to the side the moment you step over the threshold. The apartment recognizes you by the soft thud of your shoes on the runner, by the sound your jacket makes when you shrug it off and let it rest where you will. It does not insist on anything. It simply holds what you bring. Lamplight rests on the bookshelf in quiet accreditation, bathing spines and the curve of a few framed photos in a gentle gold. A postcard pinned to the cork shows an old venue you and friends used to meet near. The colors have faded at the edges where fingers have touched it often enough to make it softer than new. The lamp throws long, forgiving shadows against the wall. Not sharp enough to carve the room, but enough to remind you of familiar contours. The arm of the couch that fits the shape of your evenings. The coffee table with its tiny chip, where a glass once slipped. The windowsill that collects little things, a small plant in a tilted pot. A stack of magazines with corners softened by being read, without ceremony. You move through the room slowly, in a way that feels like answering an invitation, rather than meeting a demand. Your hands find textures, the upholstery, worn in a place where you always rest your elbow. The cool glass of a water carafe that still holds the last of the day's condensation. The soft edge of a folded sweater left across a chair. Each contact is small permission to release the stiffness the day has layered on you. There is a particular ease in letting garments slump where they will, in not smoothing every collar, in allowing the apartment to witness the undone version of you. Music hums low in the background, not loud enough to move the air, but present enough to be company. It is the kind of playlist that comes together slowly. Old tracks that snag on memory. New ones that feel like a quiet discovery. The songs do not headline. They're like small lamps along a path. Their light folded into the room and then melting away. You do not find yourself listening to lyrics for instruction, only recognizing the cadence of voices that once felt like shared jokes in bar corners. Voices that now sit in the air like relatives of memory, soft and familiar. A cup cools beside you, the scent of citrus and steam lifting faintly. You had made it earlier with the slow intention of keeping one hand busy, an old habit of ritual that comforts rather than directs. The cup's warmth has gone steady, leaving the rim to gather a little chill. The apartment smells like clean fabric and the faint ghost of whatever cologne or soap you wore today. The scent settling into the room like a note that doesn't demand attention but lingers, creating the sense that you are in a place that holds your recent self kindly. Outside, the city keeps its quieter cadence, a distant siren, the occasional hiss of brakes, headlights slipping across the window in slow, indifferent lines. Sound is softened by glass and distance and the practiced hush of night. From a neighboring window comes the low sound of conversation that is too blurred to be words, more like texture. A reminder that lives are continuing, that normalcy exists in many rooms at once. It is a small comfort, the sense of being contained within the hum of multiple overlapping routines without needing to participate. There are tokens of chosen company scattered about, an enamel pin on the notice board, whose design you smile at whenever you pass, a takeout container tucked into the sink that speaks of a dinner shared earlier in the week and left for later, a postcard from a friend pinned with a crooked thumbtack. None of these things declare anything loudly. They simply belong, quiet acknowledgments of the people who move through your life and make the apartment a shared place, even when they are not physically present. The home carries their weight softly, as if their echoes are part of the furnishing. You sink into the couch and let the cushions take your shape. The fabric breathes against you, the give familiar, in a way that makes your shoulders unlearn tightness. The lamplight catches the little scar on the coffee table you once joked about with a friend. Neither of you has tried to make it perfect. There is a steady kindness in that imperfection, a reminder that being seen does not require polishing. You let your gaze land on that corner of the room where a shelf holds small things, ceramics with uneven glazes, a ticket stub folded into a book spine, a photograph that does not need labeling. Each object keeps a low vigil, and in that company, your own day feels finished rather than abandoned. You notice how your breath matches the room's tempo. It is not a breath you are asked to change. only one that you become aware of because the night gives you the space to notice. In the chest, there is relief, an easing that has the warmth of something earned. The quiet is not empty, it is dense with the traces of the day. Conversations that passed without much thought, glances that landed like small comforts, the mundane choreography of closing up and moving on. Those traces settle into the upholstery, the curtains, the small cushions. They do not bother you, they make the place more yours. There is a soft, domestic sound in the kitchen as a faucet clicks off. It is a simple, ordinary noise that signals completion. The rhythm of the building itself is present. The settling that comes each night when people stop moving and the infrastructure exhales. You listen without needing to interpret anything. Sound becomes texture again. Piano keys of background hum, a distant elevator. Ding like a punctuation mark in an otherwise gentle sentence. Your hands fold in your lap and find the edges of the sweater you had been carrying. The fabric slips over your fingers in a way that is both sensuous and utilitarian, comforting without glamour. You think of the way small rituals collected over time, folding a sweater here, leaving a jacket there, come to mean the same as spoken assurances. They are contracts of presence, quiet agreements between you and the room. The city beyond the glass keeps moving, but inside is an arranged stillness that feels deliberate and deserved. There is a kind of patience in the way light rests now, not trying to show everything, but rather to soften what it touches. The television is off, the screen a dark rectangle that mirrors the room, doubling the lamplight and the angled shadows. You watch the reflection of a streetlight trace itself like a slow comet across the pane, the line interrupted occasionally by a passing car. The motion is external and unimportant, like someone else's tide. Your attention returns to the small familiarities, the weight of a throw, the coolness of the glass on the table, the margin of warmth around the lamp. A gentle satisfaction gathers, unspoken and steady. The day has been lived and finished, not with a ceremony, but with accumulation. Plates cleared, messages left unread until tomorrow. The steady hum of an exhausted phone, face down on the cushion. There is no checklist to complete, only the quiet finishing touches that make the room ready to be inhabited without performance. The comfort here is not declared, it is paced, like the slow turning of a page, and in that rhythm, you feel attendance without obligation. You let your thoughts be small and easy, memories that do not insist on meaning, acknowledgments of people who belong to this life, a private inventory of soft pleasures. The apartment holds them without commentary. The quiet does not require you to be anything other than present in the way you already are. There is a relief in that, not being required to narrate yourself, not needing to justify or explain. The room accepts the residue of your day and sets it down like a friend who takes your coat without asking where you have been. Outside the window, the rain begins in the distance, a barely audible patter that joins the city's low orchestra. Its sound is thin and patient, adding a layer of coolness to the air, and a slight scent of damp concrete that slips under the frame. You notice it without urgency. It becomes part of the evening's texture, a soft thread weaving through the lamplight and the familiar objects, an extra layer that accepts whatever else is already there. Stillness arrives not as an absence, but as a relief, shaped by the contours of what you carried into the night. It feels earned and steady, like a room that has been rearranged just enough for comfort. You stay where you are in that small domestic orbit, content with the uncomplicated fact of being here, held by quiet, familiar things and the unremarkable companionship of an evening that keeps its promises. You sit with the lamplight knitting itself into the room, a warm oval on the bookshelf and the arm of the chair where you settled earlier. The light tilts across a stack of magazines, a mug cooling beside them, and a jacket folded over the back of a dining chair. as if someone might return for it in the morning. The city beyond the window is a distant, steady scatter of lamps and late traffic, softened by the window glass and the small rain that made the sidewalks gleam this evening. Everything feels like a thing set down and meant to remain gentle. Thoughts arrive like small, polite visitors. A memory of a laugh carried from the kitchen. A moment when someone reached across the table to tap a napkin into place. The comfort of being noticed in the middle of ordinary things. Those memories do not insist on meaning or ask for retelling. They drift through, a soft hand on your shoulder, that reminds you of company without asking anything in return. They alight briefly, warm as a coin in your palm, and then move on, leaving the room intact and kindly. There is a faint scent of soap on your sweater, the clean crispness of a shower taken hours ago, threaded with the faint ghost of cologne or aftershave from earlier traffic through the doorway. Fabric relaxes around you, the knit giving way to the shape of your shoulders, the seams pressing just enough to be reassuring. Your fingers find the worn edge of the couch cushion and rest there, following the texture, soft, slightly flattened, where someone once leaned back against it, forever for a night. You notice the small things, a loop of thread sticking up where you might have caught it on a ring, the way the cushion folds over itself and remembers the arc of countless evenings. Outside, the rain eases into a fine, steady hush. You can hear it in the city's skin, each flattened sound a small, distant drum against the metal of fire escapes, against the warm glass of the building across the alley. Somewhere a bicycle bell calls quietly along an empty street. The building itself exhales occasionally, a soft settling that feels almost like the house remembering it is allowed to be still. These sounds do not pull at you. They are the backdrop to the interior quiet, the way breath underlies speech but does not insist on being heard. On the shelf, a photograph leans slightly, held in place by the weight of a book. Faces in the frame are easy and unforced, captured in the kind of light that makes skin look like memory. You do not reach for it, but the image warms something inside you. There is no explanation required, no cataloging of what the day has been. The faces are companions in a silent sense, reference points to who you are in this room. Someone who has been out and about, who has shared plates and jokes, and the quiet ritual of taking off shoes at the door. Those small recognitions move through you, briefly bright, then soft again, as if they had always been meant to be folded into the night. You notice the way the lamp throws shadows along the wood grain of the table, the figure of a trampling handrail, picked out in pale gold. A mug, its glazed chip sweet at the rim, sits on a coaster with a pair of initials worn into the cork. The initials are familiar, like a tune, and your mind hums them without needing to know the whole song. There is a bookmark with a sticker on it, a little symbol that at some point made you smile and tuck it into the book. Like a private nod, you tuck your thumb over the sticker now, feeling the paper's edge, the faint give where it was stuck and has softened with time. You remember a small parade of neighborhood footsteps, the kind that stop for a minute on the stoop to compare wrapped bottles or to share a jacket on a wet night. The memory is not centered on anyone in particular, but on the ease of shared rhythms. It exists as a mood rather than a story, a warmth like a coat left on a radiator to dry. That warmth seeps into the present, an echo of safety that does not demand attention, only recognition. Light from the window paints thin, pale rectangles across the floorboards, a mirror of the street's slow movement. You follow those rectangles with your eyes until they disappear and reappear as a far window light moves. In the courtyard below, a window glows where someone watches a late film. There is no urge to know what it is, only the quiet comfort of knowing others are awake and not anxious. Their own small domestic rituals echoing yours. A laundry line somewhere makes a soft whisper when the wind touches it, cloths bumping together like a handshake. You check your phone, not to look for alerts, but to feel the warmth of it in your palm. The little screen, a dim rectangle. There might be a string of messages you already read, or a silent thread that will wait. The messages do not pull you into performance, they are simply present, small attestations that other private lives exist nearby. The tactile memory of fingers tapping keys and the hush after a message is sent lives in your hands more than the phone does. You set it down, face down on the table, because you prefer the dimness the room offers right now, the small darkness that feels like consent. A sweater lies draped over a lamp's base, the soft weight of it, changing the light just enough. The threads give off a faint, warm scent, linen and a hint of lavender from a recent wash. You smooth the fabric with 2 fingers, the motion almost automatic, a familiar ritual that undoes the knotted thoughts of the day without flashy gestures. Hands are good at small comforts. The motion reminds you of other small acts of care. The way someone tucks a blanket around a sleeping person, the precise fold of a napkin after a meal, the way shoes are nudged under a bench when company is staying. An early evening conversation, the sort that bends toward confessions and is somehow ordinary, moves across your mind like a slide. The words do not replay whole, only their feeling remains. Lightness, a shared joke, the way an offhand remark was met with an understanding smile. You let it pass without picking it apart. There is no need to hold it up to the light. These memories come and go like weather, noticed, acknowledged, allowed. They are companions that do not intrude. Time here has a softened edge. Minutes stretch without needing to be counted, and you discover the pleasure of not keeping inventory. The clock on the wall makes a patient, round sound, and you meet it with a breathing that is deliberately slow, but not prescribed. The apartment holds the accumulated shape of your evenings. Books with names in their margins, a tray with a salvaged corner of foil from some takeout, the faint ring left on a table by a glass. These objects are quiet testimonies to a life lived, without dramatics, a sequence of small, honest gestures. You lean back into the couch and allow your attention to lower, not to close, but to thicken. The shadows in the corners lean with you, the room's edges softening. Memories keep arriving and leaving, strands of conversation, quick glances that felt like recognition, a joke that landed and made the room lighter. None of them says you have to do anything with them. They are simply part of the room's fabric tonight, stitched in a way that makes the whole feel steady. In the hush, you notice the softness of your breath, as if it were part of the room's soundscape, a warm little tide that the furniture seems to match. The lamp continues its patient work, keeping the immediate world in gentle focus. You remain here, among objects that remember and memories that pass, in a place that assumes you are enough, in present and in absence. The city keeps its distant rhythm, the rain hushes, and the domestic light stays soft, allowing whatever is tender within you to be held without ceremony. You enter the room with the sound of your keys still small in your hands, and the space receives you like a place that has been expecting a return. The lamp by the armchair is already on, its light a warm, low oval that rests on the bookshelf and the patch of wall above the couch. The lamplight makes the dust motes slow and deliberate, and the city beyond the window settles into the same quiet rhythm. Everything here remembers being used, the faint creak of the floorboard by the doorway, the indentation in the cushion where someone sat last night, the thumb-worn spine of a paperback that lives on the top shelf. Even alone, you can feel the soft suggestion that others belong here, because objects arrange themselves around people who have passed through, stayed up late, laughed softly, or left a sweater over the chair. You shrug out of the jacket you wore today and let it fold on the back of the nearest chair, where it casts a darker shadow on the wood. The fabric is warm with your scent, and the pocket still holds the corner of a receipt and a small sticker you meant to put on the refrigerator. The sticker has been with you to other kitchens and is part of the quiet history of your life. An ordinary token from a night out, a fragment of an evening that felt good and small. It seems right that these things sit together, patient and intact. The jacket and the chair and the lamp keep a kind of low conversation without ever saying a word. The kettle you filled earlier has left a faint ring on the counter, a quiet sign that the day wound down at a certain point, and you chose this place to settle. On the kitchen table, a bowl with the gentle curve of a shared meal waits, the spoon resting on the rim with a small smudge. The memory of other nights rests there. Plates returned to the sink after stories and laughter. A hand briefly brushing yours as someone reached for a napkin. A playlist that ran the way playlists do, when people stay late and the volume comes down step by step. There is no pressure to recreate any of that now. The echoes are comfortable, like a sweater that matches the room. Through the window, the city gives itself up to distant lights and softened shapes. A faint rain hangs in the air, turning the street lamps into low halos that blur at their edges. The wet pavement mirrors those halos, and the whole scene reads like an old photograph you can leave on the table. The room holds that outside hush in a gentle way. It keeps the world from being urgent here. A bus door sighs somewhere far away. A neighbor's soft footfall passes and then is gone. These small, ordinary sounds remind you that you are part of a larger, moving city, without asking you to move with it. On the sofa, the throw you picked up years ago is folded just so. Its wool softened at the corners where hands have smoothed it over. You run your fingertips along the fringe, and the fibers give a tiny, satisfying resistance. The kind of texture that asks nothing and returns warmth. The upholstery carries the memory of evenings when someone else left their imprint. A lap blanket draped over a knee, a catalog open between pages, a half-read novel lying face down. Those marks are quiet evidence of chosen company, a steady reassurance that belonging can be made of small, repeated habits, the sharing of space, the leaving of things behind, the comfortable assumption that room will be returned to, a familiar state. A shelf near the window holds a row of photographs and handmade cards. The photographs are unposed and soft, hands mid-gesture, a plate half-eaten, a doorway at twilight. The cards are the type that arrive after a shared weekend, the ones that say thanks in handwriting that leans a little to the right. Each piece of paper and each photo occupies its own small flatness, and together they build a modest archive of evenings. You don't need to read every caption or revisit every face. The presence of those images is enough, a quiet, unspoken chorus that says you are not inventing the comfort you feel. It is present because it has been cultivated by the ordinary acts of staying, returning, and making room. There is a faint scent layered in the air, a gentle mix of warm fabric, soap, and the faint mineral tang of city rain. It settles on the nostrils like a soft announcement that the day has changed. The scent is familiar in a way that feels like being greeted by a friend who knows the small things about you, how you like your tea, where you leave your keys, which music will always sit at the bottom of your playlist. It is quiet permission to be as you are, to set down the day and not have to explain the weight of it. The room accepts the residue of whatever day you carried, and it keeps that residue from feeling heavy. You find your favorite mug on the counter, not exactly where you thought it would be, but close enough. The glaze on the mug is warm to the touch, and the rim has a tiny nick that catches in the light. It is a detail you have known for years, a small imperfection that has become endearing. Holding the mug feels like holding something steady. It steadies the hand without making a fuss. You stand for a moment with the mug between your palms and listen to the hush of the apartment. The low hum of the refrigerator at the far end of the kitchen, the distant echo of a television in the next stairwell, the way the radiator ticked at the top of the hour. These sounds write a map of the building's evening and place you inside it as if the place is shaped around this hour. There are soft textiles folded on the ottoman, an old scarf, a pair of socks that are too comfortable to throw out, each with its own memory of warmth. You pull one over your shoulders and feel the familiar weight that has been softened by time and touch. The fabric carries the scent of someone else's cologne from a week ago, a tang of citrus that was part of an after-dinner walk. That scent settles into the fibers and becomes part of the apartment's memory, another quiet mark of company that doesn't demand attention. It is enough that such traces exist. They do not require retelling. The lamplight paints a small pool of gold across the floor and the edges of furniture, and your shadow there is a gentle, companionable shape. You move slowly, not because there is anything pressing, but because the space itself invites small, unhurried actions. The slow pace feels natural, like following the spill of light with the tip of your hand. Your phone rests face down on the table. Notifications muted earlier, and now quiet. The world can wait. You let the silence keep its own integrity, not as absence, but as a condition that holds the possibility of many things. A call that might come, an old message that might be revisited, or simply the continued, easy presence of this room. This place has been arranged by lives that have overlapped gently. A pair of shoes left by the door, a scarf tossed over a banister, postcards stacked beside a lamp. These are small, deliberate claims on the idea of home. They say, without words, that others have made this space familiar and free. The history here is not loud. It is the quiet accumulation of evenings that did not require performance. You move within that history now, and it moves with you. A soft envelope that holds what has been and allows what will be. A gentle, patient continuity that feels like being recognized without explanation. The room keeps its small, private light. A lamp with a soft shade that spreads honey across the books and the couch. And you notice how the edges of things loosen at that glow. The jacket you slipped off at the door is folded over the back of a chair. The sleeve still warm where it touched your skin a while ago. And it rests there like a brief document of the evening. No explanation needed, only a quiet record. Outside, the city breathes at a distance, a few cars passing. A distant laugh that becomes part of the building's steady exhale. Inside, there is the plain permission of not having to answer any questions, and it sits across the room like a gentle presence. The air carries the soft residue of the day, soap that felt clean when you left, a hint of cologne that now reads like memory rather than intention. The faint humid sweetness that comes after rain collects itself and releases into the night. When you move toward the window, you notice how the glass cools your fingertips, how the reflection of the lamp and the street blends into one long, calm stripe. The view is a modest one, neon, a string of backlit windows, the slow pulse of a sign somewhere down the block. None of it demands you lean in. It simply exists, and you accept it in the same quiet way. You accept the weight of the blanket that is settled across your lap. There are small artifacts of a shared life and scattered in familiar places. A mug that doesn't match anything else but feels like yours. An extra pair of slippers tucked under the coffee table for someone who sometimes stays. A photograph in a frame along the shelf that hangs at an angle only you would notice. These things hold a soft, unspoken history. They are not an account to be read aloud, but a collection of comfortable proofs that this place is held and held again. You run your hand over the book spines and feel the slight give of a favorite title, the smoothness of its jacket, and it is enough to know that these objects have been used, loved, and trusted to stay put. There was movement earlier, a slow unpacking of the day. Messages skimmed and answered with short, considerate taps. A kettle warmed and then forgotten while a playlist shifted into quieter songs. You are aware of the building's small sounds, the faint settling of old wood, the whisper of pipes adjusting to cooler night, the soft thud somewhere above as someone else adjusts a rug or sets something down. These noises create a delicate domestic chorus that reminds you of being among other living rhythms, not alone in an indifferent space. The sound of the city and the internal murmurs of the building mingle without competing, and you find that your own breathing is allowed to sink into that pattern. You notice the fabric beneath you, the couch's upholstery, the way it contours to the shape you made while coming in, the little indentation that remembers you. The blanket over your legs has the kind of texture that invites lingering. It smells faintly of detergent and late afternoon light. You press your fingertips into the weave and trace the tiny loops and threads that make a surface forgiving. There's an intimacy to the act of touching these familiar textures, a wordless reassurance that the night is soft and there is nowhere urgent to be. Your shoulders are able to unbunch, your jaw releases a hold you didn't know you were keeping, and the small muscles around your eyes loosen in the company of this slow room. Thoughts drift in and out like small boats on a still river. They are not harnessed, they pass without ceremony. You remember a friend's laugh from earlier, the way they tucked their scarf into their coat, the comfortable shorthand of plans made and no longer required to be performed. You think of an ordinary ritual, tea left cooling on the saucer, a lamp turned lower, a playlist moved to a low hum, and you feel the pleasant surrender to the simplicity of tonight's tasks already completed. Nothing else is expected. The city can keep its distant energy. The apartment keeps its warm details, and the feeling that your presence here is acceptable without explanation. The light in the living room knows how to make shadows that feel like soft paper cutouts. Rounded and private, edges that do not jab or startle. Shelves hold small collections, a set of vinyl records with scuffed sleeves, a postcard pinned to a board that you look at sometimes just to remind yourself of a moment's brightness, a plant that leans towards the window in a deliberate, patient way. Each thing suggests a life composed of small, intentional choices, not declarations. The room feels made by hands that prefer quiet gestures, folding a shirt, wiping a counter, setting a candle but letting it go unlit. These are the human measures of a space that has been lived in gently. You allow your attention to notice, sense in a leisurely way, the warm cotton of a sweater, the faint citrus of a dish soap that lingers like a polite echo, the damp, clean smell that the night brings in through the window when you cracked it earlier. The air carries a thin coolness at the window's edge, a reminder of outside air that is neither sharp nor insistent. When you let the window close, the room holds only the softened humidity and a subtle city perfume that reads like continuity rather than intrusion. It is a comfortable blend, a domestic chorus that suggests presence, not performance. There are small rituals you perform without thinking, setting the phone face down so the screen's blue light does not carve into the night, sliding the lamps dimmer until the world rounds off its corners, folding the jacket that was left on the chair into a looser, neater shape. Each action feels like a private kindness, a small settling into the hour. In the silence that follows, the room gives you back a feeling of being unobserved and yet accompanied, as if someone else's existence is acknowledged by the objects left in shared spaces. You move through these domestic acts without haste, a slow choreography that has no audience but is satisfying in its ordinariness. At the edge of the shelf, there is a flyer from a night a while ago, an evening's art printed small, colors faded from the sun that found it by the window. It is a quiet reminder of the kinds of rooms you like to enter. Lighted rooms, rooms full of complicated human voices and laughter that land soft. You do not reopen that evening. Instead, you fold the memory into the shelf like a soft, kept thing and let it sit beside the books and the candle stubs. Its presence is not a summons to repeat anything but a comfort that the space of you includes such nights and also includes ones that do not require performance. The clock ticks in an unassuming way. It sounds more like a companion than a reporter of hours. You find that not having to explain the day to anyone allows your attention to float in smaller circles, watching how the lamplight edges the picture frame, noticing the slight give in the couch cushion where you rest your arm, remembering the cadence of a friend's voice that is more felt than said. There is no pressure here to be anything but present in this light, with these textures and sounds and the soft shape of the city just beyond the window. You let the thought of tomorrow shift to a soft outline, a shape that does not need filling. You are permitted to keep it blurred. The night asks only for the present, this warm light, this sensible fabric, these familiar small things, and offers back the relief of not having to explain or perform. You accept that relief like an old garment, easy and fitting, and you remain there in the lamp's pool, in the modest warmth of the room, with nothing more to prove and nothing more expected of you tonight. The lamp by the couch hums in a way that makes the room feel like a held breath, the light pooling in a soft oval over books, and the little stack of records that never quite made it back into their sleeves. The city outside is a low, patient presence, headlights that unspool slowly along a distant avenue, the muffled rhythm of tires on wet pavement, rain that remembers the edges of the windows, and taps a quiet, irregular code against the glass. You notice these sounds the way you notice a familiar face in a crowd, without surprise, with a small pleasure that comes from recognition. Your jacket, the one you left over the back of the chair earlier, hangs with a mild, comfortable slouch. There is a crease at the elbow, where you rested your hand while you were still moving through the day. A paper cup sits on the coffee table, its rim cold now, a faint coffee scent lingering, as if the day wanted to stay in the room for a moment longer. Near it, a folded dish towel softens the edge of a ceramic mug that stayed warm, long after you stopped needing it to be. These small objects make the apartment feel lived in, soft markers of time that do not demand explanation. Along the bookshelf, there are postcards from people who have been here, each one edged with a memory that fits neatly into the pattern of the room. One postcard is thumbed at the corner, a smudge of ink from a night of fingers that held it, while laughter moved between them. A cramped Polaroid sits on the mantel, colors mellowed by age, a hand reaching toward another hand but not touching. The image quiet and uncomplicated. On the low shelf, a paperback is split at the spine where someone once rested it under their chin. The cover is softened by thumb and light. You pass your hand over these things like someone smoothing out a blanket, not to fix them, but to meet the quiet company they offer. The sofa holds the shape of where you sat, the upholstery remembering the curve of your body, the way a familiar song remembers the line you hum along to. A wool throw is draped over the arm, patched and comfortable, carrying the faint scent of the soap you used this morning and the faint echo of cologne from a day that felt necessary to be present for. Your feet find the same patch of carpet that always welcomes them, a soft, slightly flattened place that says, permission, stay. You let your shoulders lower into that permission. There is a slow unwinding that does not announce itself, a natural slackening in places that had been kept ready for the world. A playlist left on shuffle. Whispers from the speakers, not loud enough to fill the room, but present like a companion at the edge of conversation. It moves through songs that mean things only to people who listen late at night. Tunes that carry the hush of bars closing, of walking home with someone beside you, or not beside you, and still somehow accompanied. The music sits behind the lamplight and the rain, a gentle wash that keeps the space warm without trying to heat it up. You notice the textiles under your fingers, the nap of the cushion, the coolness of the cotton in your shirt, where it meets the open window air. Outside, the night breathes in humid, clean breaths. Inside, the air is warm with the quiet residue of activity, laughter from earlier, the soft clatter of plates, the rattle of a door that closed with the careful finality of people who leave with love intact. The contrast between the two makes the room feel like a shelter and a bridge at once, both private and porous, to the city's gentle noises. There is a small, familiar scatter of objects on the side table, a pair of keys with a dent in one edge from a life lived in pockets, a paperback zine that speaks in references you smile at without needing to explain, a handwritten note folded into thirds that reads like a conversation paused rather than completed. These things are quiet attestations that you belong to a network of evenings and small rituals to friends who know how you like your tea and which joke will always land. They are the kind of proof that does not shout, but is steady in its presence. You become aware, slowly, of a warmth at the edge of the room, a soft settling sound, like a small leaf finding its place. There is a cat curled on the footstool, its back a small warm crescent. It has chosen this place with the authority of someone who knows the house by heart, who has watched the comings and goings, and decided this is a good spot to rest. The cat breathes with a careful, even rhythm. Its paws twitch once, the light catching in its whiskers, and then it settles again. You feel the room extend to include that quiet creature, a shared stillness that does not demand interaction. The cat's presence is a gentle affirmation. Continuity without insistence. The lamplight slides across the spine of a record sleeve, showing the impression of a thumb where it was often held. On the windowsill, a small plant leans toward the streetlight, leaves soft and steady, a slow movement that mirrors the unhurriedness inside. The scent in the room is a layered thing, clean linen, the faint trace of citrus from a cleaner used earlier, the green steady note of the plant, and the city's tiniest trace of ozone after rain. These scents settle into the corners of your awareness like bookmarks, softening the outline of thoughts that had been sharper during the day. You allow your attention to land on the building's subtle noises, the plumbing's polite cough, the elevator's soft sigh as it moves between floors, the muffled laughter that occasionally threads through the walls from another apartment. There is no hurry in any of it. Each small sound is a reassurance that life continues beyond the walls in a gentle hum, not a pressure. The apartment feels like a held circle within that hum, a place where the schedule of the city and your own internal clock are politely out of sync, and both are permitted to be so. Your hands find the texture of the throw again, fingers tracing the tiny pulls and knots that tell the story of repeated use. You think of the people who have sat here before, friends who left a cup on the table without cleaning it up, someone who once tucked the throw more snugly around the shoulders of another, a roommate who left a book open on a passage that made both of you laugh. These memories are small, domestic beats that do not demand a narrative but make the space recognizably, quietly yours. They are traces of a chosen family, present without fanfare, the kind of belonging that sits in the corners. Outside, the rain eases into a soft mist. Inside, lamps glow like soft promises, not urgent but present. You shift, and the sofa answers with a familiar sigh, the cushion molding around you again. The cat moves a fraction, a tiny tremble that is something like contentment, and then stillness returns. The playlist lengthens into another song, one whose rhythm is calm, enough to be background but textured enough to keep attention gentle and warm. You breathe with the room, not because you are told to, but because the space makes that easy. Your breath meets the lamplight and the soft dampness outside, the cat's slow respiration like a small metronome that keeps time without ceremony. For a while, there is no need to do anything but be present in the warmth of these small details. The cushion's contour, the music's quiet insistence, the cat's tender presence like a punctuation mark that simply says, "Here." The night holds you in a way that feels earned, as if the day's various performances of labor, of friendliness, of being seen, have been gently received and set aside by the room itself. You are allowed to relax without explanation, to inhabit a domestic world that knows you and keeps you. The city continues to breathe beyond the glass, but here, under the lamp's glow, and with the soft sentinel at the footstool, the evening stretches in slow, easy loops, and you stay within them, comfortable and unpressured. The light from the lamp at the side table is more like a presence than a brightness, a soft pool that keeps the corners from feeling absent. It settles on the spines of books you keep, for the way they feel in the hand, on the shoulder of a jacket draped over a chair, on the faint ring where a mug stood earlier. The room breathes in the same slow rhythm you naturally find when the day no longer needs speaking. You notice that rhythm rather than chase it, following the subtle widening and easing of each inhale and exhale without naming it. Outside, the city hums in the distance, a softened thread that makes the apartment feel private without being separated. The distant traffic becomes a steady low note, like the sound of someone else's evening moving along in parallel. Somewhere, 2 floors down, voices fade. Somewhere across the courtyard, a door clicks. None of it asks for attention. You keep your attention small and kind, letting your vision rest on familiar places. The small shelf, where photographs lean against the wall, the plant that has a new leaf curling toward the window, the scarf folded where it always folds when the weather asks to be remembered. Each object carries a mild history, a slow catalog of nights and small alliances. They are quiet evidence of the life that fits you without fuss. Your hands rest on the upholstery, feeling the soft give of a couch that has worn into your shape over time. The fabric is a companion in itself, warm where a shoulder pressed into it before, cool where the evening air has grazed it. You notice the seam under your fingers, the little pull in the weave. You always mean to mend, but never do, the way the cushion sighs when you shift. Textures anchor the scene, the smooth glass of a low table, the weight of a blanket folded over the arm, the brushed wood edge that catches the lamp's glow. These textures make the room hospitable in a way that language rarely manages. You don't need to explain why. A faint scent stays in the air, soap from a shirt you changed out of, a hint of cologne that lingered on your scarf, the warm, clean smell of fabric softener in evening. It settles against the bass notes of damp concrete and rain from earlier, a tidy weather that kept to itself. The night's humidity rests on the window pane in small beaded thoughts, each one reflecting the lamp differently, like tiny, slow moons. You look at them without judgment, letting the small irregularities be enough. Outside, a streetlight has a halo. Inside, the lamp keeps a small world lit, and the margin between the two is where you belong. There is a photograph on the mantel that you tend to glance at on nights like this. It is not a perfect capture. It shows a pair of jackets hung on a rack, a kitchen scattered with plates from communal cooking, the kind of mess that carries laughter in its shadows. You do not study the faces too closely. The memory lives mostly as warmth, a gentle echo of being in the same room with people who know the rhythm of you. Chosen family exists in these quiet markers, a set of mugs that match in odd ways, a key left on your table, a note folded into a book. The evidence of mutual care sits unobtrusively among the objects, never loud, always steady. Your phone is face down on the coffee table. Occasionally, it pulses with light that you do not immediately answer. Messages arrive like soft taps at a window. An offer to meet for a weekend film, a photo of someone's new plant, a string of emojis that mean something private and comfortable. You let them be there without needing to reply right away. The choice to hold the evening without explanation feels ordinary and held. There is no urgency here, no pressure to explain a decision to stay in, to be quiet, to choose solitude that tastes like company. Quiet tonight is not an absence, but a presence shaped to fit. At some point, you pull the blanket further over your knees, and the fabric comes alive against your skin. Cotton slightly warmed, edges frayed just enough to feel familiar. The blanket remembers other nights. It holds the imprint of hands and years. It offers a small geography where your attention can rest. The curve of your knee, the slow stretch of your calf, the soft hollow behind your shoulder blade. You move into those small contours, mapping comfort in a way that needs no chart. The light remains soft. The air remains the same, even as it cools an inch. You are in a domestic tempo that values ease. A cat appears, not as an interruption, but as the evening's quiet punctuation. It slips from under the chair, as if it has always been there, making the simple decision to settle a hand's breadth from your feet. The cat's fur is a warm, muffled note. It breathes in such a calm way that the rhythm near it feels inevitable. You do not need to pet it. The presence alone is a company that has no requests. When the cat shifts, the whisper of a tail across the rug is a soft punctuation. You notice its small rise and fall, and let your own breathing gently reflect that pattern for a while. The animal's eyes are half closed, content and uninterested in performance. There is relief in sharing a room with something that keeps its peace. You move slowly through the space, noticing how the simple act of being here changes the shape of your evening. The lamp throws the same shadow on the wall you have seen before, but tonight it feels like a punctuation rather than a repeat. Shadows have familiarity, but not repetition. They remind you of the way time layers itself. Your fingers find the spine of a book not to read, but to trace. The paper edges whispering small sounds that make the room feel inhabited. You allow your thoughts to compress into smaller, softer things. The way a friend laughed over coffee that afternoon. The precise crookedness of a neighbor's greeting from across the stairwell. The gift of not having to perform anything now. Music is a possibility that you postpone. A record could play in the background, something slow and warm. But tonight silence sits comfortably between the city and the lamp. The low building hum becomes a backing track. And inside that hush, you can almost hear the distant clink of silverware from another apartment. A reminder that the city is full of other private evenings. Each sound is a neighbor's kindness, a sign of lives that continue without needing explanation. You keep these sounds as companions rather than interruptions. In the small light, the details of your room are generous and forgiving. The slight crease by the window where the curtain was pulled back. The faint smudge on the windowsill, where a hand once rested. The small dent in the rug, where the cat prefers to circle. These are the maps of being here. They are tender in their imperfection. You move through them with soft curiosity, noticing without cataloging, feeling without needing to act. Time unfastens itself from calendar demands and retires into easier measures. The length of a single inhale, the stretch of an arm, the quiet settling of the cat. There is an unspoken agreement in this room that nothing must be explained to be understood. The space is hospitable in ways that language does not reach, through light that does not glare, through fabric that holds without pressing, through the presence of small furniture that remembers other evenings. You are not alone in the sense of isolation. You are accompanied by the things and people that quietly know you, by the cat that chooses to be near, by the lamp that refuses to be harsh. You linger in this hush, allowing the privacy to deepen gradually, like a tide that comes in slowly and leaves everything more level when it settles. Your attention softens around ordinary comforts, the warmth of a throw, the softness of a sweater you left on a chair, the way the lamp stains the room in a single patient color. In this city-skinned apartment, the night is an act of gentle keeping. You are kept just as much as you keep it, and the balance is small and exact. You let it be so. You notice how the hours thin when you stop marking them, how time becomes a soft fabric that bends around small movements. You watch the lamp glow on the bookshelf and feel the steady warmth that makes the room give way to itself. You do not need to account for where the day went, only to observe the evidence of it. An emptied mug, cooling beside a chip saucer, a jacket folded over the arm of a chair, the way someone left it last night, a pair of shoes by the door, with one laces untied like a quiet punctuation. You let your attention move slowly, the way fingers trace familiar textures without hurry. You sit and feel the upholstery press gently where you settle, the fabric relaxed from many evenings like this. You notice the slight give beneath you, the soft resistance of foam, and the memory of weight from earlier. You let your shoulders release a little, not out of effort, but because the moment invites it. You breathe and note the timing of your breath, not to change it, only to be with it as it comes and goes. You allow thought to soften around impressions, sound first, then scent, then the small tactile facts that make a room feel like a place you can belong to. You hear the building settling in its low, forgiving way. You hear the pipes whisper, the elevator sigh, a distant siren that holds no urgency here. You listen to rain meeting the city, light, intermittent taps against the window that smooth into a hush. You notice the muffled hum of a neighbor's radio 2 floors over, playing a song you half recognize, the rhythm softened by brick and distance. You do not need to know the next note. You only let the presence of sound make the interior broader, a net that catches the restlessness and keeps it gently moving away. You trace your fingers over a stack of postcards on the coffee table, each one a small conversation in ink and color. You remember the last time you folded into a couch with friends, the glow of someone else's laugh still lying in the grain of the wood. You hold the memory like a warm scarf. You do not have to replay any scene in full. The suggestion of touch, the tilt of a photograph, the smell of a shared meal, folded into memory, are enough to let your chest soften. You keep the objects close because they are quiet company, artifacts of a chosen family, who live in these margins of night with you. You notice the lamp's light pooling on photographs, how faces in them are softened and intimate without explanation. You do not say their names aloud, and you do not need to. You let the photos do the work of being familiar, of indicating a contour of belonging without comment. You feel a small, grateful warmth that these images are here, that their presence rearranges the room into something less single and less strict, more like a place that has been shared with laughter and the easy leaving behind of keys on a hook. You reach for a sweater draped over the back of a chair and feel the texture under your palm, the knit slightly pilled where it has been loved, a curl at the cuff where a thumb has absent-mindedly worried at the yarn. You pull it around your shoulders and notice the way fabric shapes the body with gentle containment. You do not do this to change how you feel, only to add another layer of familiar texture. You sit with the weight of it and let the fabric hum with small comfort, as if the room itself is offering a quiet coat. You allow your awareness to settle into the details of the air. You smell the faint residue of soap from earlier in the day, a clean, slightly citrus note that blends with the humid city air slipping through a slightly cracked window. You sense a whisper of cologne on the collar of that sweater, a trace left behind by a day that is now soft and unimportant. You notice the way warm indoor air presses against the cool glass, how the contrast makes the window bead with tiny points of reflected streetlight. You watch the streaks of rain tracing glass like slow, bright rivers. You feel the cat when it chooses to arrive, not as an event but as a gentle addition to the room's existing rhythm. You sense the small weight at your feet first, a heat and vibration that moves up like a hush. You feel the cat coil into itself and then stretch out, a soft body finding purchase against your shins, then your lap, then the plump curve of your side. You feel the tiny, steady purr reverberate through fabric and bone, a low private tide that anchors you in the present. You let the animal's breathing be a simple, patient metronome. You do not infer meaning beyond its presence. You simply accept the warmth and the quiet exchange. You notice the cat's fur against the back of your hand, the fine little catch of whiskers when you let your fingers trace its spine. You do not speak to it aloud. You do not need to. You find, in the unhurried rise and fall of that small breathing body, a permission to stop assembling sentences in your head. You rest into the cadence of another creature's contentment, and that rhythm slides sideways into your own. You watch the lamplight make small islands on surfaces, a patch on the rug, a band across an open book, a rectangle on the windowsill where rain glitters like tiny inland stars. You pick up a book and run your thumb along the edge of the pages, feeling paper as a quiet, tactile trace of someone else's thought. You allow your eyes to move across a sentence now and then, not to study, but to be surrounded by letters that hold no demand. You close the book and let it be another soft presence in the room, a companion that does not require anything from you. You think of the day as if it were a shirt you folded and placed into a drawer, useful, worn, now safely put away. You let your mind stop sorting events into importance. You let impressions gather like soft weights that balance one another. You notice how the city outside continues its own slow routines. A distant truck, a pedestrian's umbrella, brushing pavement. Events that do not reach toward you with urgency, only with the casual evidence of life. You allow your senses to prefer sensation over narrative. You feel the cool of the window pane under your fingers when you rest your palm on it, the slight stick where dampness meets glass. You hear a neighbor's laugh, carried faintly, a human sound that is easy to accommodate. You smell the small, dark note of coffee cooling in the kitchen and let it sit beside the sweeter traces of soap and night air. You feel the lamp's warmth behind your neck and the cat's weight at your side and the sweater's sleeves around your forearms. All small, grounded things that do not demand explanation. You do not think about what comes next. You let thought loosen into a quiet mesh of sensations and small domestic facts. You notice the softness of the cushions, the slight unfamiliar crease where the jacket was folded, the postcard with a scrawled joke propped against a candle. You hold those details like a hand lightly in yours. You do not need to perform or to speak. You are invited only to be present with these small certainties. You let the room be a steady container for the slowing of your day. You let the lamplight, the rain, the cat, the worn fabric, the postcard from chosen family, and the distant city noise braid together into a comforting, wordless shape. You remain a part of this stillness without obligation, simply allowed to rest inside it. You notice, without needing to name it, that time has lost the sharpness it might have held, that sensation has replaced urgency, and that the night is here with nothing required of you beyond your quiet company. The lamp by the armchair casts a small, honest pool of light that keeps the rest of the room in soft shadow. You sit with your back against the cushions, the fabric familiar beneath your shoulder blades, the seam worn smooth by a dozen nights much like this one. Outside the window, the city is a handful of distant lamps and the occasional blink of a taxi. The sound is a comfortable, even murmur, softened by glass and the mild damp in the air. Somewhere below, a neighbor returns with keys that click, a small rhythm that does not demand attention but insists on being known. The apartment breathes into the same slow way it always does after the day unwinds. A jacket rests across the back of the chair, the scent of the afternoon still faint in its fibers. You notice the weight of it as an imprint left in the room, the small proof of going out and coming back. A shelf holds a stack of postcards with handwriting you can still recognize. Without looking closely, corners bent from being thumbed. There is a flyer tucked into the back of a book, edges softened from an evening that left you smiling later at home. These are ordinary things that read like a quiet, private history, the kind of small markers that mean you belong inside these walls without having to say anything. Your hands rest on your knees. The skin there is warm from the lamp, cooler near the edges where the room breathes. You notice the difference, not like you are trying to fix anything, but like noting the finish of a cup you hold. The knit of your sweater has softened where the cuff rubs against your palm. The textile is familiar in a way that feels like permission. You can relax into its weight. Your shoulders, which had been carrying a day's worth of shape, feel less insistently held. Muscles that were taut in the earlier hours have decided on their own to let their grip loosen. The body answers the quiet of the room with small, unannounced shifts. There is a low playlist somewhere on shuffle, songs you listened to with friends on a rain-splattered terrace last spring. The tunes are hushed in this hour, chosen more for texture than for lyric, and they keep company without asking for a response. A glass on the coffee table refracts the lamplight, turning the liquid inside into amber and honey. You watch the tiny movements when you take it up, a small tilt, a pause, the color sliding with ease. Nothing needs to happen beyond this simple exchange between hand and glass. The cushions yield under you in a way that is a little like being welcomed back. The upholstery remembers the curve of your hip and offers its softness without comment. The throw tossed over the back of the sofa is the one with the slight fuzz, the fringe a little threadbare at the corners. You tug it around your legs in the way your body wants, not because anyone told you to, but because you feel its texture and reach for it as if the hand knows before the mind. The room smells faintly of the soap you used this morning, layered with a trace of cologne that lingered on your neck through the day and now settles into fabric. It is domestic and private, a scent that implies presence and then lets it rest. On the low shelf near the window, a framed photograph leans at a slight angle. You notice the faces, people you have made plans with and canceled sometimes, people who know how you like your coffee, and who show up with a spare umbrella when the sky shifts. The picture is ordinary, an evening market, warm lights, hands passing over small things. It is a quiet ledger of chosen family, a record of being seen in ways that mean less performance and more simply being. Having it there, slightly sun-faded at the edge, does not instruct. It simply sits, a gentle reminder that the room has been shared enough times to feel lived in, comfortable in its own familiarity. The window is open a crack, and the night air is cool against your ankles. Where the throw does not reach, the city smells of wet pavement and distant food carts, an urban perfume that makes the apartment feel less like an island and more like a curated portion of the larger night. Rain from earlier left the street glossy. Now it breathes faintly from the sidewalks in little wisps. A single drop runs down the window pane and catches the lamp's reflection, turning it into a line of gold that moves with a very patient gravity. The slow movement holds your attention for a moment, without asking anything of you. A soft pad of pause interrupts the room's current, almost like a punctuation mark. The cat has come to find the patch of warmth on your lap, arriving without ceremony and without demand. You feel it before you see it. The subtle shift as weight settles, the faint vibration that is the purr, held low and steady at the edge of hearing. The animal curls into the shape your legs make, a small warm crescent, tail tucked neatly. The purring is a private metronome that the room accepts without surprise. It blends with the hum of the building and the distant city to create a layered quiet that feels domestic in a very fundamental way. The cat's fur is familiar under your palm, thick in the midwinter way that makes fingertips sink just enough. You rest your hand there and do not move it in any deliberate way. The touch is not active, it is an acknowledgement. The animal breathes slowly, the rise and fall of its back, a soft statement that everything here is as it should be for the moment. Sometimes the cat will shift, pad a little closer to the lamp's warmth, press its cheek against your hand, then settle again. These are small negotiations that belong only to the two of you and the room, no audience needed. The light washes across the spines of books on the shelf, titles you have read for comfort, Others glanced at in passing. A mug with a faint chip on its rim sits near the stack of coasters, the chip's edge smoothed by use. These are the sorts of details that compile themselves into a sense of home, not as a finished product, but as a slowly adjusted collection of objects and habits. The sofa knows the shape of your evenings as readily as the lamp knows where to sit. There is an economy to it, a quiet efficiency that leaves space for simply being present without extra motion. You notice how the room's geometry frames your quiet. Lines of shadow from the blinds create soft bands across the floor. The thick wooden ledge of the windowsill is cool under your bare feet when you rest them there, the grain of the wood fine and reassured by use. The radiator's occasional tick is a punctuation in the room's slow sentence, a metallic exhale that blends into the pulse of the building. The sounds are domestic and non-intrusive, the kind of noises that map out a lived-in life without requiring attention. Thoughts arrive in gentle shapes, an image of a friend turning up with a spare jacket, a memory of a neighborhood coffee shop where the barista knows your order by sight, a half-remembered laugh that threads back to a late walk home. None of these demand action. They are small windows into lives that exist outside these four walls and fold back into them with ease. There is a comforting constancy in that folding, a sense that the room is at once private and porous, allowing the world to pass by without needing to be fixed. As night deepens, the sounds outside thin into a softer patter, the city reserving its louder motions for other hours. The lamp keeps its circle of warmth, and the cat breathes in time with a slow, steady rhythm that matches the apartment's steady, modest sounds. You remain there, an occupant in a space that has been eroded into comfort by small repetitions and friendly familiarity. The body answers this environment in incremental ways. Fingers unclench into the palm. Your jaw softens, the chest expands, and exhales without emphasis. The room holds you, quiet and unremarkable, and that is precisely what makes it feel like belonging. You move slowly through the apartment as if the rooms have all been tuned to the same low frequency, the kind that lets small things stand out without making demands. The lamp by the sofa throws a warm, round pool of light that rests on the shelf, and the stack of books, making the spines look softer than they do in daylight. A jacket lies where it was shrugged off earlier, draped over the back of a chair like a familiar shape that remembers how you fold into it. The city beyond the window keeps its distance. A few distant headlights trace lazy lines on the wet street, reflected in the glass like another layer of quiet. There is no rush here. The air has the weight of evening, slightly warm from long hours inside, cool at the edges where the window meets the sill. A faint scent follows you as you move. Soap that still clings to fabric. A trace of cologne that seems to belong to whatever day just ended, and the clean, papery smell of envelopes and a postcard that sits on the table. The postcard shows a rooftop at dusk, people only suggested by tiny silhouettes, and you find a small comfort in recognizing that image without needing to pin any meaning to it. A playlist hums low, the songs chosen for their soft edges and the way they let space between the notes. The sound is more texture than message, like a blanket spread across a room. It catches on the table where an empty mug cools, steam long gone, leaving only the faint warmth pressed into the ceramic. You brush a finger along the rim and feel the memory of heat in the glaze, simple and ordinary. There is a photo tucked into an old frame, the kind that sits at a tilt and is rarely straightened. The faces in it are not the focus of a story told aloud. They are the gentle proof that evenings like this are shared sometimes, that laughter and quiet coexist in the same place and both have a right to stay. A small cat is curled on the arm of the chair, a steady, warm presence that has become part of the room's rhythm. The cat breathes in a slow, steady pattern, a tiny rise and fall that matches the distant hum of the building settling. Occasionally it shifts, a paw stretching across the fabric, claws tapping softly with no urgency, then folds again into the same roundness. The cat does not look for praise or permission. It simply exists, a companion whose company is uncomplicated and steady, as if to say that being here is enough. You sit where the upholstery has softened from use, feeling the fabric yield like a memory that remembers your shape. Fingers find the edge of a blanket, tracing the worn pattern without thinking. The texture is familiar, threads that have caught and smoothed over time, a softness that has been earned. There is a quiet pleasure in the small giving of material things, the way a cushion supports, the way a lamp casts an honest circle of light. These details do not demand answers. They are company for whatever thoughts queue up at night, and when they arrive, they are permitted to be small and inconsequential. Outside, rain begins in a hush. Not a sudden downpour, but a gentle persistence that makes the street glisten. The sound is far enough away to be companionable rather than urgent. A sprinkling that fills the spaces between headlights and the occasional footstep, echoing on pavement. Drops patter on the window, each one a tiny private percussion that seems to applaud the quiet. The world continues beyond the glass, moving at its own pace, and the room remains an island of stillness where tasks remain unfinished, with no pressure to complete them. Unfinished things sit in friendly arrangements around you. A letter is half written on the desk, the pen resting across the page as if waiting politely. A sweater waits to be folded, sleeves casually thrown over the arm of the chair. There is a playlist bookmarked in a place where the next song might not be chosen until morning. These small incompletions are not failures. They are gentle invitations to let the present be imperfect, to feel it hold together without perfect closure. The feeling that lingers, one you have carried in and out of rooms, tucked into pockets and left at the corner of tables, has no need to be resolved. It is allowed to exist softly, like the hum of a refrigerator in the next room, a background note that does not require explanation. The lamplight softens the edges of the apartment's contents, smoothing corners and making shadows into shapes that are easy to rest your gaze on. A single window reflects the room back at itself, a double of lamp and blanket and the cat's curled silhouette, reminding you that the place you occupy is owned by small gestures and familiar hands. Books lie open at random, pages turn to lines that once felt important, and now sit like small treasures, waiting to be found again without hurry. The apartment remembers where things were left and keeps them safe in that memory. There are traces of other evenings folded into the space, like notes that are no longer urgent. A mug with a faint lipstick mark from someone who stayed late one night. An extra set of keys that matched a time when a door opened more easily. The presence of chosen people is quiet here, evident in mismatched mugs, in a favorite coaster that bears a chip, in the soft echo of laughter that still settles into the corners. These are the marks of belonging, not proclamations, but familiar gestures that say this place has held more than one story. They are small confirmations, the kind that arrive without fanfare and that then make themselves at home. Warmth gathers around the center of the room, a combination of lamp heat, a cat's body, and the residual warmth of a day well lived. It is not a performance to be judged. It is simply the way matter relaxes after movement. You notice the way your shoulders let go of a fraction of tension when you adjust your position, how the breath lengthens without being monitored. Thoughts unfold into ordinary patterns. A line of a song plays, a memory of a subway stop, the feel of the collar when it was turned down. Each detail is allowed to stay small. Outside, the city keeps a distant cadence, a late bus easing past, a dog's bark folded into the night, a conversation muted by distance. Inside, you keep company with small things that ask nothing of you. The cat shifts and settles again, a soft rumble between breaths that you register like punctuation. The letter on the desk isn't finished, and does not need finishing tonight. The jacket on the chair waits in its familiar slump. The postcard on the table remains an image of dust caught mid-breath. Unfinished feelings rest alongside these objects, as natural as air moving through a room, present without weight. You remain there, held by the ordinary architecture of evening, the soft glow, the small animal warmth, the slow rain on the window. There is a permission in the simple fact of being present without performing, a quiet knowing that it is acceptable to let questions linger and for comforts to be small and exact. The night does not insist on answers. It offers a place where things that are not yet finished can remain benign and unhurried, as the lights dim and the city continues its steady, patient pace. The lamp in the corner leans its light across the room like a slow exhale, warm and unhurried. The bulb is low, the shade soft, and the glow pools on the shelf, where a few books live on their sides. A photograph, pressed between them like a quiet bookmark. You notice the small things first. The way the lamp throws a faint halo on the plaster. The soft crescent shadow beneath the windowsill. The chill of the glass when you press a fingertip to it. Outside, the city keeps breathing at a distance. Cars passing in even, polite lines. An occasional voice that is already folded into the dark. These sounds are small and easy to follow and then let go, like coins sinking through water. Your jacket from earlier hangs over the back of a chair, embroidered cuff catching the light in a modest, familiar way. It is exactly where you left it, and the fact of that steadiness has its own kind of comfort. The fabric of the couch gives under you in a way that remembers you. You ease back into it and feel the upholstery soften around your shoulders, a worn welcome. The texture is known, the seams smoothed by afternoons and multiple quiet nights. Your hands rest on the blanket folded across your lap, fingers finding the soft edge of a hem, the little tug of a loose thread, the tiny warmth where your palms meet, fabric that has kept your shape before. The air carries the mingling scents of the evening, a faint hint of soap from the shower earlier, the clean brightness of linen, a trace of someone's aftershave or cologne from the day folded into the jacket. Outside, rain left a thin, cool scent on the pavement, and that dampness rides the night in like a patient guest. The city's scent is softened at this hour. Concrete and rain, a distant friar or late cafe, the green of an urban tree, rubbing against itself in a small breeze. These things arrive without insistence and then settle, wrapping the room in a low, domestic hush. Light and sound begin to blur at the edges. The lamp outlines the room in slow brushstrokes, and the distant hum of traffic becomes a steady, velvety undernote. When you tilt your head, the window reflects the room back at you like a dim, companionable mirror. The curve of the bookshelf, a mug, left on the side table, a small stack of postcards with handwriting you have seen before. You let your gaze rest there, not searching for anything, simply taking the scene in. The world inside the glass looks gentle, framed, and slowed, like a film whose minutes are measured in warmth rather than announcement. You move a hand to the mug and feel the residual warmth, the faint oil of tea on its rim. The cup fits the shape of your palm in a way that is almost precise, the glaze smoothed by use. There is no need to finish what's inside. Just holding the mug gives an anchor, a little weight that says you are present in this room and invited to be still. The mug rings softly when set back down, a small clear note that mingles with the building's low settling, the radiator's muted sigh, and the distant shuffle of someone upstairs making their own small preparations for the night. Your phone rests face down on the table, a faint rectangle in the lamplight. Earlier messages sit quietly, their tiny bubbles of light now dimmed. There was laughter, a cluster of shared photos, a few check-ins that read like a gentle chorus, and you feel the warmth of that continuity without needing to reopen it. The knowledge of those voices, that chosen family who live in threads and small rituals, carries a softness, reassuring not because it proves anything, but because it quietly confirms you are not alone in the usual ways. The thought of it is a soft warmth behind your breastbone, a gentle, private lighthouse. The room holds small tokens of other nights. A coaster with lipstick faintly edged in a color you used once, a set of keys that click, just so when you drop them into a bowl, a postcard from a friend whose handwriting leans familiar and casual. None of these things call you forward. They are present like witnesses, patient and ordinary. You let them be still, content with the way memories arrange themselves, like objects on a shelf, safe, accessible, and without demand. A cat arrives at your feet sometime after you have settled fully into the rhythm of the apartment. It moves with soft intent, a warm, weighted presence that circles the ottoman, once before choosing a place near your ankles. You feel the vibration of a purr through the floor in a slow, comforting cadence. The animal's fur brushes against your socks when it turns, and the contact is an understated permission to keep being quiet. It curls into a neat crescent, tail tucked, ears folding like small petals, and the room adjusts its tempo to the animal's contentment. The cat's breathing is a measured punctuation to the night, neither demanding nor dramatic, simply communal. There is a kind of grammar to these evenings that you know well. You have learned how the day unwinds into this hour, the softening of tasks, the retreat of performance, the permission to be unadorned. The apartment looks different now that the lights are reduced. Shadows no longer outline but hug, becoming softer, more indulgent. Objects lose their edges and gain texture. The wood of the coffee table appears warmer. The rug's fibers are more pronounced and inviting, and the cushion you tuck behind your back informs a palette of ease. Each sensation is small enough to be attended to or let go, as you prefer. You listen to the city as if it were a neighbor who keeps late hours and hums in minor keys. An elevator dings somewhere, a bicycle bell faintly, a dog's distant breath. Rain taps the pavement now and then, a delicate punctuation that presses the window's glass into attention. When you reach to close the curtain a fraction, the movement is familiar and easy, the fabric sliding like a practiced hand. The curtain muffles the night without smothering it, keeping the glow of the streetlight soft and speckled, like distant stars recalling the city's slower heartbeat. Minutes brush past without being counted. You attend to textures and small sounds, the slight crinkle when you shift on the couch, the whisper of the blanket as it settles, the cat's paw stretching against your ankle. There is a generous absence of intention, a permission to occupy the space exactly as it is. Thoughts that drift in are allowed to be small, uninsisted upon. An image of a friend's smile from earlier, the way neon had turned water glass into a colored jewel, the line of a song lyric that isn't finished and doesn't need to be. Time here is measured in soft degrees. One moment blends into the next without corners. The lamplight calms the surfaces around you into comfortable planes, and the sounds melt into a kind of accompaniment that is neither lonely nor crowded. The night holds you in a way that assumes steadiness rather than demands an explanation. It feels like home because home is less about addresses and more about the ways small routines and familiar objects conspire to keep you company. You remain gentle with your attention, letting it fall where it will and slip away when it wants. The room keeps its quiet arrangement: lamp, cat, the folded jacket, a mug cooling. Outside, the city continues to breathe in its measured way. Inside, you are allowed to simply be. The edges soft, the light soft, the sounds a soft, steady shawl around the evening. The world narrows to the small comforts, and they, in turn, spread a soft permission to stay. You are stillness as much as motion, choosing the smallest gestures that bring the body its own small comfort. The couch holds you in a familiar curve. The upholstery softened where you sit most evenings. Your jacket from earlier hangs over the back of a chair, a little crushed where you dropped it, the cuff still carrying the damp from the rain you stepped through. Outside, the city is a low wash of light and movement, a watercolor of headlights and distant signs that blur behind the window glass. Inside, a lamp near the bookshelf gives off a pool of gentle light that rests on the spines of novels and a couple of postcards. The ink slightly faded at the edges where you have turned it over in your hands before. You notice the small economy of things around you. A mug placed on the tray table, the faint ring where yesterday's drink dried, a scarf laid to air, its fabric soft and warm from being worn. A photograph slipped, behind a frame, faces close and easy, laughing into the kind of moment that leaves a quiet residue in the room. Everything has its place of temporary rest, and you are part of that quiet arrangement. The air smells like clean fabric, and the subtle trace of the cologne you used earlier. The notes softened by the night. A hint of rain lingers at the window frame. The metal cool to the touch where you ran a fingertip to clear a bead of water. Your limbs are pleasantly heavy, but the weight is welcome. Movement reduces itself to what matters now. The curl of your hand around the mug, the small shift to make the blanket sit just so over your knees. The blanket is well worn, the kind of weave that remembers you. It slides without sound, settling over you with a soft, even heat. The texture presses gently to your skin, a familiar pressure that needs no thought. You let your shoulders lower a little, release the upward lift of the day, and find the space between the ribs where tension unthreads itself without drama. Sounds are gentle and uninsistent. A distant siren becomes a soft curve in the background, the rhythm of an elevator 2 floors down, a neighbor's shoes on the stairway like someone moving through a different quiet. Rain taps the sill in a private, irregular voice, tender and not demanding. The radiator breathes some faint warmth into the room, a subtle thrum that feels like an old friend shifting in sleep. When you listen, you realize how much of the city is hushed now. No need to perform. No urgency to account for the day that was. The evening keeps its own time and allows you to keep yours. There is a small shelf above the lamp, where a few things live together. A candle you never light but like to see, a cassette tape with a handwritten label, a little ceramic dish with keys and a worn lighter. These are relics of many late nights, tokens of chosen evenings and quiet departures. You reach out and touch the tape itself warm from the lamp's glow. Your fingers remember the texture of rewound plastic and the label that smiles without words. It is enough to trace the edge, to hold the shape, as movement dwindles to this single, unhurried action. The cat arrives without fanfare, a soft shadow slipping from the doorway and padding across the wooden floor. It circles once near your feet, presses into the hollow of your ankle, then chooses a place at the base of the couch. The fur is cool and slightly damp from the window ledge where it had been watching the rain. It settles with that particular sigh of contentment, curling into a compact shape that radiates calm. Its presence is quiet companionship, a small rise and fall of a breathing body, a tiny intermittent purr that is barely a vibration through the blanket and into your ribs. You do nothing to invite it, and it does not require anything from you. Both of you simply exist in the same warm light. You allow the hours to simplify, one because of the other. Your phone lies face down on the table, notifications silenced earlier. Its screen dark like a small black bird. The playlist you touched on earlier continues somewhere between songs, the edges of the music smoothing into a background that fills the room but does not ask for attention. Sometimes you catch the echo of a lyric that used to make you laugh with friends, a memory tucked into a private cadence. There is comfort in that echo, a soft agreement that what matters is the shared taste, the late-night jokes, the plans that were never meant to be kept. The window glass holds a faint mirror of the room, a double image where the lamp repeats itself, where your own silhouette looks almost like a figure in a photograph. City lights spill in at the corners, distant and patient. The rain begins to soften, less of a presence now, more of a suggestion of dampness in the air. The coolness touches the top of the glass and comes in as a gentle draft that brushes your face when you shift, like a reminder of continuity outside the apartment's small sphere. You notice the change as a pleasant detail rather than a summons, an adjustment rather than an event. You think of people you love, not as a list, but as warmth that inhabits objects and places. A pair of borrowed socks on the stair rail, where someone left them after a movie night. A note taped behind the bathroom mirror, with an inside joke you smile at alone. The scent on a jacket that evokes a laugh shared over cheap takeout. These are fragments of belonging. There is an ease in remembering them without obligation, an acceptance that their presence is part of the room's furniture, as ordinary as a lamp or an armchair. The night does not ask for explanation, and you do not provide one. Your hands find a small ritual of their own, smoothing the blanket, adjusting the cushion, aligning a book face down so the spine points away. Each motion is reduced, deliberate in the way of someone conserving movement purely for comfort. Your foot flexes, toes pressing into the soft rug. The cat shifts and a faint vibration runs through its chest, a ripple that you feel against the blanket and then in your own quiet. For a moment, the two of you occupy a rhythm that needs no words, a shared count of breaths, an easy agreement of presence. Light pools and recedes across the room. Shadows lengthen in a slow domestic motion, not urgent but steady. The bookshelf silhouettes soften, the postcards and frames blending into a calm collage of edges and muted color. If you glance toward the door, you may notice the outline of a jacket, the curve where an old pocket remembers a folded receipt or a ticket stub. Little tokens of life and small celebrations sit politely in its margins. They are reminders that this space has been used, loved, and left open for resting. As movement fades to what is necessary, you keep one hand resting on the blanket, fingers relaxed. The cat turns its head, eyes half, moons of contentment, and then settles again. The lamp hums in a steady, kindly way. Outside, the city breathes in long, unhurried cycles that do not demand your attendance. Inside, the room holds you with the quiet assurance of a place that knows you. Your motions narrow to what feeds ease, the tilt of your head, the soft repositioning of an elbow, the slight uncurling of a shoulder. Effort gives way to ease, and ease stretches like a small exhale that is all your own. You notice first how the room inhales and softens around the edges, as if everything that had been sharp enough to hold all day is letting go of its corners. The lamp on the side table hums in its low, warm way, a small sun that keeps the sofa and the stack of books and the coat rack in a gentle pool of light. Outside, the city has thinned into a distant, steady breath, cars moving with polite patience, a late tram whispering past, footsteps that are no longer carrying urgency. The rain that came earlier leaves a cool gloss on the window, and a scent that mixes with the lingering soap on the towel you tossed over the chair. The apartment feels settled, like the kind of place that remembers you. You find yourself tracing the same quiet route through the room you always take when the day has finally softened. Your hand brushes a shelf where postcards sit in a row, corners curled from years of glances. Each one is a small permission to be here, a tiny evidence of nights shared, or evenings when voices were different and familiar. There is a tote with a worn logo folded near the door, the fabric softened by errands and performances of ordinary life. It settles easily into the dim, not demanding, simply present like the rest of it. You notice the textures as if you are reading them with your fingertips. The sofa has a memory in its cushions. The fabric gives in at the places you choose to rest into. A knitted throw, loose and soft, folds around your knees when you sit, and the yarn holds the warmth of earlier movement. The coffee table's wood is smooth, along the edge where you rest your wrist, and the faint ring marks from earlier cups become a quiet map of the evening. Small inhalations of air move through the apartment, cool near the window, warmer by the lamp. The balance between them is easy, like breath, finding its rhythm without effort. Your thoughts, which earlier filed themselves neatly like shirts on a rail, now begin to unhook in slow ways. They take on the quality of half-remembered songs, pieces that you can hum without needing to know every line. Ideas lose their insistence and slide into a softer shape. Plans that were crisp and bright in the afternoon fold like paper into envelopes whose seals are no longer important. You find no urgency about remembering each detail. Instead, the details sit like small glass jars, safe and visible, not needing to be opened tonight. A postcard with handwriting you know lies near the lamp. You read it not to analyze or decide, but to let the familiar scrawl be a companion. The handwriting curves easily, punctuation relaxed, and it makes the room feel tuned to a frequency you understand. There are objects that carry the echo of chosen rooms and chosen people. An extra mug in the cabinet, a scarf that smells faintly of someone who stopped by earlier, a playlist that was left playing and now hums at a volume that fits the air. These things are not memories that demand retelling. They are ornaments of belonging, reminders that the space holds more than one kind of life. The window pane holds the city like a painting, streaked with rain and dotted with distant lights. Those lights are neighbors to each other, tiny and warm, each with its own private work of night inside. Occasionally, a movement catches at the edge of the glass, a bicycle passing, a silhouette at a bus stop, and it is gentle enough to feel like background music. The hum of the building, pipes, a fridge, the faint settling of wood, creates a steady, low rhythm that steadies you. It does not tell you what to do. It simply is, and you adjust to it without thinking. Your skin remembers the day in soft ways. The shirt you changed out of lies over the back of a chair, its sleeve folded where you left it. And that simple absence has its own kind of comfort. The water from your evening shower has left a warmth in the air that mingles with the cooler breath coming from the window. The scent of a familiar cologne, the one you wear when you want to feel quietly put together, lingers on the collar of the coat and sits like an old friend who does not need to speak. There is no obligation in these traces. They simply are, and that is enough. You move through small rituals that have no imperative beyond their gentle cadence. The kettle clicks quietly on the counter, the sound a tiny punctuation in the hush. You pour tea into a cup that has a small chip on the rim, the imperfection tidy and beloved. The steam rises in thin, slow threads and carries with it the whisper of lemon or herbs, something clean and unhurried. You hold the cup with both hands for a moment, feeling the warmth seep into your palms. And there is a kind of surrender in that contact. Nothing dramatic, only the ease of being held by an ordinary thing. Later, as the room settles deeper into the night, a cat that has spent the evening moving like a shadow chooses a place on the rug near your feet. You registered it earlier, a soft presence curling in and out of the lamplight, but now it becomes a small, warm weight. The cat's breathing is a quiet metronome, a slow punctuation that does not demand attention but offers company. It shifts, stretches, and finds the exact angle where the throw meets the carpet, folding itself into that corner like a practiced ritual. You do not name the cat or speak to it, you simply notice the little sounds it makes, a contented sigh, the faint tick of claws on wood, and the way its tail brushes your ankle as if to mark territory in the tenderest possible way. You allow your thoughts to go soft around the edges as the night continues. They take on the tone of watercolors, colors that melt into each other without hard lines. Moments that earlier felt urgent now feel like notes written in pencil on the back of an envelope, easily blurred and still meaningful. You watch the patterns of light and shadow on the floor with a kind of friendly curiosity, noticing how the lamp shapes them and how the cat interrupts them with a paw. There is no need to pin anything down. The shapes are allowed to be approximate. The sounds from the hallway are kind and unimportant. A neighbor closing a door, the muffled exchange of voices that are already part of someone else's evening. You can tell without needing to know names that lives are moving through rooms nearby, ordinary and unremarkable. That ordinariness is soothing. It is a reminder that being kinder here is part of a larger thread of quiet domesticity, that no one is asking for declarations or proofs, only presence. At times, your gaze rests on the small clusters of objects that map a life lived with care. A stack of magazines with bent corners, a candle that has burned to a gentle lip, a photo frame where faces are indistinct and smiling in ways you do not need to name. These things are simple statements of belonging. They do not define you, but they hold the echo of other evenings, other voices, the way rooms gather stories by staying open enough to be filled. You notice how the air tastes, slightly cool, with the promise of rain, softened by the warmth from the lamp, and the faint sweetness of the tea. It moves slowly, a gentle circulation that keeps the room hospitable without fuss. Your breathing follows that ease, elongated and unforced, like the tempo of a song you know well enough to hum without thinking. It matches the cat's breathing, the tick of the clock, the minor sounds of the city beyond the window. As the night stretches on, thoughts continue to unlace themselves. They no longer hold the same weight, their edges rounding into the room's light. You allow them to linger without deciding their fate, letting them be small, dim objects placed on a shelf where they can be seen but do not press. The apartment keeps its quiet company, and you keep yours. There is an uncomplicated pleasure in the mutual presence, as if the room and you have agreed, wordlessly, to simply be. The lamp keeps glowing, the cat keeps sleeping, and the city keeps moving in a faraway motion that feels intimate because it is constant. Your night gently unwinds into itself, and everything that remains seems soft enough to stay. You sit with the lamp turned down low, the bulb a small, patient pool of light that gathers onto the shelf and softens the edges of everything it touches. The room feels like an exhale held just long enough to settle. You notice the way shadows rest against the spines of books, how a coat, slung over the back of a chair, keeps the shape of where someone stood earlier, as if presence lingers like a scent. The city beyond the window is a distant, gentle constellation of movement, headlights like slow thought lines. Nothing urgent, everything contained by distance. Your hands find the familiar fabric of the sofa, and you register its history. A faint seam, worn glossy by evenings like this. A patch of upholstery that remembers a long ago spill, now softened into character. Your fingers follow the curve of the armrest in small, unhurried motions. The air is cool near the window and warmer toward the lamp, so you shift the throw across your knees, feeling the contrast where cotton meets wool. Textile holds memory in a quiet way. You rest against cushions that know your shape and allow it without question. The soundscape is household and urban and utterly simple. A water heater sighs and then sleeps. Far below, another apartment plays music so low it becomes texture, a chord that blends with the building's slow settling. Rain taps the sill now and again, patient and dry. And when it does, it reminds you of the evening earlier, when coats were brushed against shoulder blades and keys clicked into pockets. There is no need to go through that day again. You let the last outlines blur into something that does not demand retelling. You notice small domestic artifacts that say, "You are not the first to make this place feel like rest." A mug on the counter holds a faint crescent of tea. the inside rim marked by a habit someone else taught you, or you kept because it felt like company. A stack of small notes is tucked under a jar lid, handwriting looping in a way that makes you smile softly to yourself, remembering how strings of plans were once made and then allowed to dissolve into tonight. A playlist of songs that always sat at this hour is paused mid-track, not needing to be pushed forward. These things sit with you like friends who are simply nearby, not insisting on conversation. There is a quality to the night that feels like being gently wrapped. It comes from the way sound is softened by distance, how light is measured and never harsh, how the door clicks and seals the building's interior from the speeding world. The apartment seems to inhale and keep you inside that inhalation, as if the rooms are arms that fold close without pressure. You feel it most in the chest, a loosening, a permission that is given and not asked for. The night holds you in the shape you are tonight, which is enough. You move slowly through tasks that used to be hurried. A lamp is nudged a half inch, so it casts a different shadow on the wall, and you study the new curve it makes. You slide a magazine back into place, the cover warmed by earlier hands. A glass is rinsed and set to dry, and you watch the water bead on the rim. Small motions, each one a small ceremony. They are quiet, acts of care that do not aim to fix anything. They simply acknowledge that the present needs tending, like houseplants that prefer low light and steady water. At some point after you have been settled a while, a soft weight comes to rest near your feet. A cat, careful as a thought, curls into the hollow between your ankles and the sofa. Its breath is the size of small waves, and it fits without command. You feel the light press of fur and the heat that is not loud but constant. The cat does not demand, only belongs to the room as much as the lamp or the coat. When it moves, you shift with it, an older choreography of mutual ease. Its purr is like a distant motor. It blends with the building's hum and becomes part of the night's careful scaffolding. You follow that purr with your awareness, letting it steady the rhythm of your breath. You think of the people who have passed through this apartment, friends, flatmates. The someone who left a key once and then never needed. 2. The group who shared a couch during a film that felt bigger than the living room. Those memories rest here as objects do, unforced, like a well-worn record tucked back into its sleeve. They are not required to prove anything. They simply exist and make the space more you than the bare walls ever could. Lighting is small and chosen. The lamplight has a warm tone that flatters the room, and you like how it nudges the angles into gentleness. A strip of streetlight threads through the curtains and paints a soft lattice on the rug. You let your eyes trace that lattice and return. There is an ease in allowing the eye to wander without finding a stake to plant. The world beyond the window continues on a scale that does not need your attendance, which is a quiet relief. You breathe slowly with that knowledge, the city's motion acknowledged and then put away for the night. You listen to the cat as it rearranges itself, a small rustle against fabric, and you also listen to the way the building settles. Sometimes there is the muffled lift of a neighbor's laundry basket, a distant laugh that does not carry urgency, a bicycle bell like an accidental chime. Those sounds keep you company in the manner of a chorus that is not performed for you, but moves with you through an evening where nothing is demanded. The hum and the small touches are like a gentle guarantee that you are not wholly alone, even when you are content to be with yourself. Scent weaves through the room, the faint citrus of a candle that was lit for no reason other than its quiet brightness earlier. The clean linen smell that belongs to clothing folded and left on a chair. The hint of soap on the towel you used after a shower. Outside, the night dampness carries the faint mineral tang of the city after rain. When you inhale, these scents do not overwhelm. They settle into the background and make each small motion more grounded. They remind you of rituals you keep, simple and private, that mark the end of a day. You let your thoughts become as soft as the fabrics around you, unsharpened, porous to the evening. Memories pass on gentle feet. A joke from dinner, a text that made you smile without needing to answer, a friend's voice on a voicemail that you replayed once and then allowed to rest. None of these require action. They are like postcards, kept for the texture of their existence. The room keeps them without commentary. As the night goes on, the shapes of things simplify. The lamp becomes a warm circle, the jacket a shape, the cat a steady warmth. You notice how the room's lines grow forgiving, how corners seem to lean inward to cradle what you are doing, which is the smallest possible thing. Being present with ordinary life. No resolution is required, no decisions hang in the air. There is permission here to be quiet and to let the evening hold you, unbothered and unobserved. You stay with these sensations, the steady lamplight, the hush at the window, the cat's breath like a metronome, the small domestic sounds knitting together into a calm. The night is not an absence, but a presence that shelters rather than commands. You remain easily in the slow, soft logic of this place. You sit where the lamp pulls its warm circle, the rest of the room softened into an easy blur. The light is quiet, the kind that doesn't announce itself, only keeps. It rests on the spines of books and the scar on the windowsill, where paint has worn away from fingers that used to lean there. The city beyond the glass is a scattered constellation, but it is distant enough tonight to feel like an agreeable companion, rather than a presence demanding attention. There is no schedule pressing at the edges of this hour, no expectation to perform or explain. Everything that mattered earlier has been set down, folded into sleeves or into the soft give of a chair, and you move with the slow economy of someone who knows the work of the day is already done. Your shoulders loosen on their own. The fabric of the sweater you picked after leaving the building loosens at the neck, settles against your skin in a way that says you are allowed to rest into warmth. The couch remembers its shape around you from nights like this, its cushions softened by years of quiet use. A small map of evenings, friends, and ordinary Sundays. A jacket lies where it was removed, slung over the back of a chair, the way familiar clothes can carry little stories in their folds. You notice the scent of it, a faint trace of the place you were, the soap someone wore, a citrus note of a bar's cleaning spray. Your own cologne left faint like punctuation. It is a tidy, ordinary album of smells that makes the room feel tended. There is a low hum in the building, a steady, almost sleepier sound than earlier in the evening. Pipes settling into their night rhythm, a distant elevator sighing between floors, the soft shuffle of shoes on a staircase, far enough away that the mind does not latch onto it. These are small, reliable sounds, not urgent, and they let you rest in the knowledge that the world continues without insisting you pay attention. Outside, rain has been patient and light. It pats the window now and then, a gentle punctuation that keeps the air cool and a little clean. The scent of wet pavement mixes with warm indoor air and something domestic, linen detergent and the faint sweet of leftover coffee, that tells the room is alive with the traces of living, not staged for anyone else. You let your fingers trail along the arm of the chair, feeling the subtle grain of wood under the lamp's glow. The texture is familiar and specific, an occasional nick where a mug once slipped, the smoothness that comes from years of hands. Your palm rests there without needing to hold anything. Beneath that small contact, your breathing finds its own steady rhythm. Untethered to clocks, more like listening to an inside ocean, you might think of a friend or a chosen family member who would appreciate the same quiet. And rather than pulling the thought into speech, it sits like a photograph in the air. Clear, uncomplicated, warm. A playlist runs low on the speaker, not filling the room so much as slightly coloring it, like paint with an open can nearby. The songs are familiar, the kind you share in good company, not the kind that demand attention. They give space, soft harmonies that let your mind slide between notes and leave room for other small observations. the way the radiator clicks at intervals, the faint reflection of a neon sign that kisses the corner of the glass, the way the lamplight makes the dust in the air visible for a moment like slow snow. These details do not require action. They are quiet markers of presence, not of urgency, and you feel permission to regard them without obligation. There is a sense of ease around small rituals. The mug beside you, half cooled, bears the ring of warmth where your hand rested earlier. It smells faintly of chamomile, with a trace of the lemon peel someone left in it on a night not long past. A little domestic footprint from another evening. Nearby, a photograph leans against a stack of books. A casual snapshot, edges softened, not framed for others. The people in it are only suggested, close, comfortable, laughing at a moment that needs no explanation. These pieces of life settle into the room like furniture. Their presence quietly affirms that belonging is simple and ordinary here. Your gaze moves around the space without urgency. The curtains are half closed, allowing a slim cut of the outside world to touch the floor. The cut of light on the rug is cool, a subtle contrast beside the lamp's pool. You notice the blanket over the back of the sofa, a neutral color threaded with tiny flecks, soft where it has been used, and slightly flatter where it has been folded. It has the weight of evenings of being pulled up over knees during movies or conversations that go late and then sink into comfortable silence. It is a small, known thing to tuck around you if you like. Not a solution, but an option. You think of the rhythm of leaving and returning, of the small unspoken agreements that let queer life feel lived and not performed. There is comfort in the mundane choreography. The shoes placed side by the door, the towel draped over the radiator, the way a lamp is left on for the possibility of someone else coming in later. Without announcing itself, the room keeps a memory of community in the way objects are arrayed. It does not demand explanation. It simply holds the traces of being here together in ways that do not require spectacle. A soft weight settles near your knee, warm and content. The cat has returned from wherever it wandered earlier in the evening and chooses this particular pause to curl into a smooth, purring presence. The sound it makes is low and tactile, a vibration you, haba, feel more than hear, harmonizing with the radiator's click and the distant city hum. It moves with a small ritual, an elegant circle, a tucked head, and then is still, eyes half closed in that eyes half open way that speaks of perfect, unbothered attention. It does not demand you reach for it. Its nearness is a companionable fact. You feel the tiny, sure weight of it and the warmth of its breath. Its fur is faintly perfumed by the night, the smell of linen and the faint trace of food left on whiskers, and it anchors this hour with a soft continuity. The cat shifts once, a small sigh of contentment, and you notice how the room accepts this tiny life with the same unremarked ease as everything else. You can sense the accumulated softness of the evening pressing gently around you, like a hand without insistence. There is no need for explanations here, no need for justifications. The city hum, the lamp's reach, the cat's steadying breath, the memory in the photograph, all of it composes a gentle melody that does not require you to join in any particular way. Time here is measured in small, safe things. A sip of tea, a turn of a page if you choose, a stretch that loosens a held muscle and then eases back into stillness. You allow your thoughts to be simple and particular, not projects to complete. A face flits by in memory, a joke shared over a late-night snack, the way a friend's jacket smells like a place you visited together once. These recollections arrive like soft guests, stay as long as they like, and then leave without drama. The room continues to be present for them and for you, an accepting container that does not insist on productivity or performance. As the hour deepens, sounds become more distant, and the lamp's glow grows more intimate. You trace a small line of attention along the objects that hold the evening. The mug, the book spine, the jacket on the chair, the cat curled with the quiet assurance of belonging. Nothing feels unfinished. There is no list pressing at the inside of the mind, no demand to explain, to justify, or to become anything other than what you are in this room. The awareness that settles is gentle and without heavy focus. It is enough to be near the light, to notice the small textures, to hear the low city pulse, and to feel the soft, steady companionship of a life lived openly and quietly within these walls. The room keeps the same dim shape it had when you let the day settle. A lamp on the side table throws a warm oval over a stack of books and the back of a well-used chair. The jacket you left on the hook leans into the wall, a small silhouette of habit. The window remembers the city in muted reflections, a pattern of distant lights that does not demand your focus. Everything is steady in its small, private way. You notice how the fabric of the throw around your knees responds to the weight of your hands. It is a familiar thing, the texture almost as readable as a friend's voice. The weave is smooth where it has been smoothed into habit, and soft in the places your elbows tend to rest. The air near your cheek carries the faint ghost of a soap you wore earlier, and the clean warmth from the kettle that was on hours ago. These are the kinds of things that feel like belonging when the world outside has loosened its pace. There is a low, steady hush in the building, pipes settling, the distant ease of a neighbor moving slowly through another apartment, city water breathing under the street. Rain whispers against the glass now and then, a small, cool rhythm that keeps the edge of the night from being bare. The smell of damp concrete meets the indoor scent of worn cotton and a faint trace of cologne that is neither loud nor new. Nothing in the air is insisting anything of you. It simply is. You let your shoulders unhook from the posture of the day. They do not have to carry anything more for tonight. You are allowed to let the muscles remember softer shapes. Your hands rest on your lap, one over the other, the skin warming where they touch. The lamplight finds the fine lines on your palms and treats them like a map that already exists rather than something that needs to be read out loud. You like that quiet privacy of touch. On the shelf, small objects keep their soft testimony of how the life in this room is built. A postcard from a friend who stopped by with too many stories and one too loud laugh sits next to a small ceramic dish that was a gift from chosen family. There are 2 mugs drying on the rack from an afternoon when someone stayed for long tea and longer conversation, leaving a lipstick mark on the rim of the second one. A photograph leans against the frame of a mirror, edges softened, showing a room full of people whose arms overlapped in ways that were compact and easy. These traces do not speak, they simply hold light. You become aware of the slight give of the cushion beneath you. It remembers where you sat earlier, during an exhausted call, and remembers now. The upholstery has softened over time to the exact shape that fits you when you come back to it. When you move slightly, the chair responds with a gentle creak that feels like recognition rather than complaint. The wood of the side table is cool against the back of your hand when you slide along the armrest, a contrast that grounds you to this small corner of the apartment. There is a companion presence near the foot of the couch, a small, quiet shape, curled like a comma of warmth, breathing with a thickness that matches the slow pulse at your wrist. The cat is here, in the soft way. Animals are present, not demanding, not claiming, simply close. Its purr is a low, even thread that stitches across the room, a sound that fits with the rain and the hum of the building. When it shifts, the blanket brushes and makes a sound like a page turned slowly. It settles again into the same small space, and the night around you feels stitched into continuity. You take in the light on the opposite wall, where a painting hangs. Its colors have mellowed in lamplight, the edges blurred, the shapes allowed to be less certain than they were by day. It is easy to imagine the painting changing very slowly, like a friend breathing beside you. A small pride ribbon, folded and tucked on the top shelf, peeks out from behind an old paperback. It is unobtrusive and honest, like a quiet promise that this room remembers who lives here without having to say it. Movement outside is distant and soft. A bicycle hums by on the sidewalk, 2 blocks away. A late bus exhales and continues on. A pair of shoes pause on the stairs and then go on again. None of it requires you. The city is alive without asking for anything from this small room, and that knowledge is part comfort and part permission. You feel the pleasant friction between the busyness beyond and the gentleness inside, a contrast that makes the stillness feel chosen rather than abandoned. You notice the way your breath moves when you do not try to change it. It is slow enough to be courteous to your body, even when you do not manage to command it. There is a rhythm to the inhalations and exhalations that fits the arc of lamplight across the floor. You let the breath be the small metronome that keeps everything in a soft tempo. There is no hurry in these breaths, only the kind of patience that comes from being allowed to rest in place. There are small domestic sounds that hold their space in the room, like punctuation. The faint click of the thermostat, the soft skid of the refrigerator motor in the kitchen, the rustle of fabric when you shift your position. Each sound is fluent with the idea that life here is lived in unhurried increments. You do not catalog them so much as recognize them, like remembering lines in a lyric you have known for years. They are reassuring because they are ordinary, and because they mean nothing dramatic. Your hands find the edge of a book beside you and lift it without intention. The pages are slightly softened at the corners, familiar from being read in fits and starts over slow evenings. You open it at a place you had marked earlier and let your eyes follow a paragraph you already know. The sentences do not demand attention. They lull rather than chase. Words fold into the ambient pattern of the night and become part of the texture on the shelf of things that have meaning without urgency. Every so often, a message buzzes mildly on your phone and you let it sit unanswered, collecting a little warmth next to your knee. There is a comfort in knowing people who would check in without requiring a reason, and in knowing that you could reply in the morning or leave it for later. That sense of chosen company is not loud here. It is absorbed into the room like light seeping into a fabric, present and gentle. Outside, the rain quietens for a moment, and the city offers a breath that sounds like a hand lifted from the wheel. Inside, you feel the familiar weight of a life that has accumulated in careful, trustful pieces. The blanket, the mug, the faint smell of someone else's perfume on a coat in the hallway, the photograph that sits askew. These are small, certain proofs that you belong in this place. They do not announce anything grandly. They simply exist, and that suffices. There is nothing to conclude tonight. The evening does not require a neat ending. The lamp will dim later, perhaps, or you will let it burn and allow the room to stretch into a softer darkness. The cat will shift and settle, the rain will find its steady cadence again, and the building will keep its low and private chorus. For now, you stay where you are, accepted by the hush that surrounds you, and by the quiet, ordinary things that remember you when the lights are low. The night remains open and steady, and you are quietly accompanied.